And I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta independence, broadcasting live 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. Our night show goes from 5 p.m. to 6:30. We now have a day show that goes from noon to usually about 1:30. Tomorrow you have a guest appearance on WDW Pro. So
Yes, I do.
There will be no morning show, but there will be a night show tomorrow. And there's a lot of big news coming out of Alberta and of Canada, whether it's their new space program, which is just another way for politicians to line their pocket, whether it's Mark Carney coming after independent content creators, talking about Alberta independence through the mainstream media.
Hello to all our Fed watchers as well. Thank you for being here too.
Okay.
And before we start, thank you so much for joining us today. Please do subscribe because it is the best way to help us out, especially now that they're coming after us and everybody else. We do read all your comments. We have sections throughout the show if you're new here. So at the end of each segment, we read all your comments. We do prioritize super chats, so we stop the whole show for those. But otherwise, we do love to know what you all are thinking and want to say.
Yeah, and thanks for everybody that did tune in this morning. It was the debut of our afternoon or morning show, I guess you would say.
Noon.
And we had 1,000 viewers, so I was more than happy with that.
Yes, so thank you so much. And again, right now we're going to be talking about some similar things, but mostly just completely different news and stories.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm the one that gathers all the stories. It takes me a long time now to gather 2 shows worth of stories, but I make an effort to have completely different stories, except for one, and that's the censorship Mark Carney is trying to go after with Alberta independence.
Yes, and yeah, you were mentioning tomorrow I will be on WDW Pro. I'm on it every other Thursday. It's at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 12 p.m. Eastern on WDW Pro, talking all about entertainment, culture, the culture war, and wokeness within the Hollywood and entertainment industries. It's really fun. So if you want and you can, stop by there. I always put the link on X or on our section here on the channel. You can go find it and talk about Alberta independence, because I will say that we are speaking about Alberta independence. So if there's anybody else out there in the universe that is interested in that, now they'll know.
Okay, let's get into some comments, and then we'll get into the first section, which is always stay free Alberta, which is usually the most important section because it talks about what's going on the ground.
Yes. Edward says, Buenas tardes, Edward. Thank you for being here. Steve Safaro says, prediction, Carney will use gerrymandering just like U.S. Democrats did for last night's Virginia election. He could eliminate ballots by redistricting Alberta sections to tribal land.
Well, he's going to try to do some funky things, but we do have Danielle Smith, and she is doing a fantastic job. She almost seems like she's heading him off at every turn because she's already starting to do redistricting, and she's adding seats to rural districts, which I like to see. Anytime we can take a little bit of power away from that condensed population base in major cities and give it to rural areas, I think it is a good thing.
Yes. And that's it.
Yeah.
So let's start with Stay Free Alberta and all news about petition and what's going on with that.
Free home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
Well, and I will say thank you to Steve and all the American viewers that are supporting Alberta independence.
Yes.
It's really going to be a group effort. Later on today, we're going to get into the censorship they're starting to bring into Alberta independence. And at a certain point, if Carney really buckles down on this thing, we might have to have international content creators like Steven Crowder, like Glenn Beck, really start talking about Alberta independence in order to kind of get the message continuing to be out there.
Exactly. But let's start Stay Free Alberta section with Jeff Rath saying, I hopped on my bike. I can't picture that. Went out canvassing today on my foothill. Lots of people who already signed got signatures from people who weren't going to sign because they heard we were well over what we needed. I was gratified to see way more brand new Alberta flags and Canada rags hanging at my neighbors' doors and gates. Such a nice way to spend a sunny afternoon.
Well, I'm the one that grabbed this article, and I don't know how I missed.
Post.
I hopped on my bike. Picturing Jeff Rath on his bike is just a funny picture in my mind for some reason, but good on him.
It's like a cute picture.
Yeah, but good on Jeff Rath for continuing to canvass right up to the end. If he's doing it and he's the leadership of this, you better know that everybody else is as well.
The decentralized leadership,
Yeah.
I will say. But it is, again, good to see that even at the highest levels, they're still doing it, and they're still telling other both canvassers and people that maybe haven't signed. Again, we always have the stayfreealberta.com link down below in the description. If you haven't signed yet, you can find petition locations there or canvassers, or even get a canvasser to go to your house so you can sign if you're unable to go yourself. So please do so. It's those last few days and that last little push that I think can make a big difference.
Well, I'll say if Jeff Rath is on his bike, he must be in an area with some good weather. So it's good to hear if certain areas in Alberta are getting good weather. That should help out the canvassers.
Mm-hmm. We also have this from Corey Morgan saying, Mr. Big Bear sure has the Federalists worked up. They hate it when minorities don't behave as they think they would.
Yeah, and this is absolutely fantastic. You're having tribal elites collude with the Liberal federal government in order to build a narrative that we're trying to steal native land, that we're a bunch of colonizers, whatever it is they want to try to build. It's very hard to build that narrative when you're having tribal members come out in mass, make public statements, make videos, post pictures like this. I mean, they have a couple tribal elites. It seems like we have an army of thousands of First Nations members that are actually supporting Alberta independence because they have been getting the short end of the stick from their elites in their tribe for so long.
Exactly. And again, ironic and the same confession through projection of saying, oh, you want to steal native lands as they do the whole land grab in British Columbia and the 30 by 30 plan also being announced recently.
Well, the thing is, as the mainstream media, they're not going to want to lay off this narrative of this First Nations are getting the short end of the stick from Alberta independence. And that's just not the case. As they built this narrative and as they put out segments on the nightly news, I think it's important to us to clip these pictures, clip these statements, and then put them all together in a 30-second hot reel to kind of go against the narrative we know the mainstream media is going to try to paint at this point.
I also think it's a good thing that, for example, John, talking to Albertans, or John, Alberta Patriot, John from Alberta, we interviewed him, his interview is already up, has been talking to some brave members from certain tribes within Alberta that are saying, I do support independence because X, Y, Z, and being able to profile and highlight those people that are willing to speak up because their voices are some of the most important ones as we see further control by both the federal government, but also using First Nations leaders and chiefs for the injunction, for example.
Well, and there's major repercussions when tribal members speak up and say they want independence. They can get banned from tribal land. Any number of things can happen. So as real consequences, but even with that fear they're trying to stoke into them, they're standing up and they're saying, no, we want independence. And thank you to everybody that has posted that, because I know it can't be easy.
Yes. But also, Rise of Alberta has this saying, if you pay 50% tax, you're half a slave. Albertans pay 50% tax to a government they never voted for. What does that make Alberta?
Exactly. And once Alberta gets its freedom, we're hoping for either no tax or an extremely low flat rate tax. Taxes should be for corporations, the natural resource sector, and there is enough money there for us to completely reimagine the tax system and the way the government spends money. I think that's the important part. We really need to put limitations in the ways government can actually spend money, what they actually regulate, what they don't regulate, what their power actually encompasses.
Exactly. And also from Rise of Alberta saying, I'll be honest.
Oh, you're really blowing through the articles.
Sorry. I'll be honest, when Mark Carney got elected, I thought he'd try to keep Alberta in Canada by addressing real grievances. Instead, he's done the opposite and doubled down on every failed policy fueling independence. Every day, he's proving why Alberta needs to leave Canada. And as Jeff Rath always says, he's just a walking advertisement for Alberta independence at this point.
Yeah, and I thought maybe he would address real grievances as well to stop Alberta from gaining independence. He's doing the exact opposite. His game plan must be one of complete authoritarianism, because at this point, every single action he has taken has to be sending people to the polls in mass, or going to send them to the election booth in mass to vote for Alberta independence, whether it's the floor crossers, whether it's the consolidation of power when it comes to oh God.
To what?
You can go.
Exactly. The floor crossers, the 30 by 30 plan, the fact that for example, the MOU that is essentially failed, and everything else that he's even tried to do to make Alberta stay only gives more reasons and reasoning for Alberta to want to leave.
Absolutely.
I was waiting to see if you had your point back.
Well, I forgot the word. And then I was like, the entire point fell apart without that one word. And I'm still trying to think about it now.
Okay. Well, in one segment, you might remember it. We'll go back to it.
Well, there's other articles where I need that word as well. I'm getting old, people.
What's the word?
I'm getting old.
What do you want to mean?
I don't want to talk about it right now because we'll get into a 10-minute conversation about it.
Okay, but let's actually get into one of the more worrying things that we found out last night and today, that the narrative push against Alberta independence, and specifically against independent content creators that are speaking up and being that decentralized movement as well, that citizen initiative in similar and parallel to the actual canvassers and the petitioners and everything else.
Well, this is the big story of the day, and it's the one story I kind of doubled up from the morning show to the night, and I'm really trying not to do that, but in this particular case, it was important. And this morning we played the 2-minute clip. Now we have the 9-minute clip. It's a completely different narrative with a lot of the same talking points. So I thought we'd play some of it. We won't play the whole 9 minutes. I do recommend going to watch it, but it really, when I watched the 9 minutes, something really clicked in my head and I understood what they were doing. We'll talk about it in just a moment.
And this is from CTV News. Scott Robertson says, CTV Deception Decoded segment on Alberta separatism and U.S. annexation AI slopaganda, which is what they're calling it now. And I will say, not only did they do this video and then the 2-minute video, but also a few articles and even some social media posts, which they don't know how to do. We've gone through that as well.
Today on Deception Decoded.
Sorry to pause it so quick. This, I'll just say, this asshole used to come into my bar all the time in downtown Vancouver. And man, I should have kicked him out a few times. But now he's going against Alberta independence. My God, what has he done to his life?
A stunning new report is out revealing a network of YouTube accounts with millions of followers targeting Albertans. The content they're pushing: Alberta separation, Alberta joining the U.S., and slamming the federal government. But these videos are made with AI avatars, actors, and as you're about to see, oddly parrot one another. Have a look.
4 Canadian provinces, tired of begging Ottawa for basic respect, finally decided that they'd rather join the United States than stay chained to a system that bleeds them dry.
That's a real human being.
I think so,
and
too.
And it's weird that they just started with that. And then they also, and we're going to go see his response, but they also highlighted The Fringe, which is also a human being.
Well, The Fringe was the most egregious because he's probably the biggest content creator within Alberta independence with the largest audience. And the fact that they're trying to single him out, they owe him an apology and a retraction. And if we don't get it at this point, I think there's going to be a lot more content creators having a hubbub about it.
And we're going to see his response after this.
4 Canadian provinces, exhausted from pleading with Ottawa for fundamental dignity, finally concluded they'd prefer American integration over remaining shackled to a structure that systematically exploits them.
Alberta bypassed barriers that no longer serve the national interest. This project also reframes the conversation around authority.
It bypassed barriers.
Those are creepy.
Number one,
those are clearly AI.
Number one, those are creepy, but who's actually watching that?
True.
That no longer serve the national interest. This project also reframes the conversation around authority.
The report, which exposed this network of accounts, was published by the Canadian Digital Media Research Network. CTV's Carolyn Jarvis spoke with one of its authors, Angus Bridgman, from the Media Ecosystem Observatory at McGill University.
And let's pause it for just a quick second. And I'm going to say where I think this narrative came from is there was an actual human being that was on the nationalist side that was making short videos targeting Keith Wilson and a lot of other grassroots content creators on the side of Alberta independence, posing different questions. And we figured out really quickly he was going to Grok and asking him what are the main talking points against Alberta independence, and he would recite it word for word off his computer, and we started calling it AI slop. And I think it was so damn effective that the nationalists are now trying to take that and pin it on independence, when a lot of these AI independent stations, as they're calling them, are making individual videos about Alberta, but they had the majority of their growth about the downfall of Canada. They were downfall of Canada AI channels to begin with.
Have you with us?
Pleasure to be here.
This report is startling. First of all, how did you uncover?
Sorry, of course he looks like that. I'm sorry.
This network of YouTube accounts.
There's actually some great reporting last fall by Colleen at the Canadian Press, who talked through one of these accounts, and they were just getting going at the time, so we were talking hundreds of thousands of views. Our researchers kind of checked back in March of this year and realized, oh my goodness, there's been not only many more of these accounts, but their growth in view count, engagement, and their consistency, particularly on the Alberta messaging, was very startling. And so immediately kind of sounded the alarm.
And yeah, they are having huge growth, not just these AI accounts, but even regular people within Alberta independence. And that shows there is a major interest in this. I'm all in favor of getting rid of these AI accounts. If the federal government wants to go after them, talk to YouTube, get rid of them, that's just going to push more people to real content creators that are actually authentic and real human beings. There's a reason we put ourselves on every single cover. And it's not because I want to be there, because I definitely don't. I don't like putting myself on the cover, but it allows the viewer to know this is a video by a real human being on the outside cover and on the inside.
And also, we always have a disclaimer at the bottom of every video saying none of our content is produced, edited, researched, etc. by AI, and we do not rely on AI either. And we made that conscious decision a while ago because we saw the explosion of all of these AI channels that were almost siphoning views. And it's very different to say AI channels, but with a real human behind them, versus AI channels that are just made to monetize them.
Well, I was just getting pissed off when I was on YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube, and every other video I was clicking on was a freaking AI video. And so I started only clicking on videos with somebody on the cover, because that way I wouldn't waste my time clicking on 5 videos before I find an actual video made by a human being.
Alarm internally and got working on trying to unveil this to the Canadian public.
And we mentioned earlier a couple of the messages that these accounts are pushing, but more broadly, what did you find there?
So this is a part of a broad kind of YouTube network that produces what we call propaganda here.
A network, yeah.
Okay, I do recommend watching this entire video just so you know the kind of propaganda they're putting out. They're definitely going after Alberta independence content creators, so much so on the smaller clip we showed this morning, which was a different report. They talked about the federal government is now making a list and looking into who's talking about Alberta independence. The first steps to make the list. The second part is to censor us.
Yeah, and I do want to watch a little bit more just because I want to see what he explains in this bit.
Oh, they're going to go into statistics.
I know, but okay. I want him to say one thing.
And what they're doing is they're largely posting polarizing, inflammatory messages, trying to rile up their audience and trying to get engagement through that. It's a very common pattern on social. This set of accounts in particular is really hyper-focused on Alberta separatism and particularly U.S. annexation. So when we look at the types of content.
And also listen how they continue down the path when they're doing these reports of saying separatism.
Yeah.
They don't say independence, and it's becoming clearer and easier to differentiate between those that are going to talk about Alberta independence honestly and truthfully versus those that will just continue the dribble of propaganda against it.
Yeah, and I will say I made the mistake of calling it a separatist movement in the beginning because I didn't know better, but I very quickly corrected that. But there are a few people on the side of Alberta independence that still refer to it as separatism. Hopefully they understand independence is the better term to use because it has a complete different connotation to it.
Freedom. But I will also say we got
independence.
And independence. And we got a comment on our earlier show saying what should actually be very shocking to CTV, CBC, etc., to the mainstream paid off propaganda outlet of the federal government that are all these channels is, and all of this media campaign that they're doing, is that small content creators are getting a better response and are actually getting both more views but more engagement as well than they can with their big giant studios and multi-million-dollar contracts.
Because we can talk honestly about the subject. If there was somebody telling me talking points to say, they would say, oh, don't talk about this or don't talk about that. It's going to hurt independence. It's like I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. I very often game plan in things that might come up in the summertime or things Mark Carney might try to do. Other content creators don't talk about those things. It is truly a grassroots movement. And that's also part of the danger because there's so many voices inside of Alberta independence. It's going to be easy for mainstream media to start clipping a channel here or a channel there. Potentially they can find a channel that says, oh, they want to be part of the 51st state. I haven't seen a channel like that in a long, long time. And everybody that's supporting Alberta independence at this point understands we want to be our own free and independent nation.
And also, we've had people that disagree with us as well when they watch us. And again, we don't toe a line because these are all things that we think and believe and see as well. But I do want to see the response from Unacceptable Fringe himself saying the Canadian media has crossed the line. Because again, not in that report, or we hadn't gotten to that point yet, but they pointed him out as one of those AI propaganda channels. And I think he goes into that as well.
This channel has been dragged through the mud when it comes to online drama or other things with other YouTube channels. However, this one takes the cake as a government-funded news site has now labeled this channel as fake AI-generated content to push Alberta independence and propaganda. Let's take a look at what CTV News ran multiple times yesterday, morning, noon, and evening. And
they ran it morning, noon, and evening. This was the 2-minute segment. We showed this morning on our morning show. Then they made the 9-minute segment. They're flooding the zone with articles as well as posts all over social media. So this is a full court press by the mainstream media at this point.
I'll show you the article and we'll go over what was done in that video, the claims that were made, because there is some truth to what they're saying. But this channel, as I wave my hands around and clearly state, it is not AI. And take a look at the nonsense they're pushing here.
You know, down east has really stuck it to Alberta.
The 74-year-old emphasizes most supporters want independence, not annexation. But a new report identifies a network of about 20 YouTube channels posing as Albertan voices, pushing U.S. annexation and Alberta separation. Researchers say they're not real and appear coordinated, using the same scripts, the same clips, and even posting at the same time.
So there we go.
That's pretty good. You can leave it there. And I will say they would be better off leaving those AI channels alone, because if they get rid of those, it's going to be all authentic grassroots
real voices.
Individuals and real voices from real Albertans and real Canadians that have been disenfranchised and already left the country, but really have an axe to grind with the federal government because the way they treated not only us, but all Canadians during the truckers' convoy and during that entire time.
Exactly. So absolutely ridiculous. And now to prove that we are real people, we will read your comments as we always do. Wild Rose Republic of Alberta, hello, thank you for being here, says this hit piece is designed to drive a wedge in the independence movement. Of course.
Absolutely. And I'll say we read comments at the end of every section before we go into the next section. The next section will be Alberta Politics.
Yes. Sam says, if there is a topic, there are 50 dumb AI videos on it, every side of both political spectrums. Yeah, of all political
Absolutely.
spectrums. Exactly. And again, those are the kinds of channels that will just grab anything that they think will get them clicks and will get them either to monetize or further earn them more money and just drive them until the topic becomes unusable to monetize with, and then they move on to something else.
Yeah.
Dara Robinson says, hi, Nat and Guy. Had the misfortune to watch Lukasics on mainstream media. Can't say the channel ends in V with Lukasic calling the premier names and the independent movement a real threat to Canada. It was a gong show.
Yeah, and I've really been noticing this. I think we have a few articles in a few sections today where they're really trying to pin Danielle Smith with Alberta independence and make her the black sheep of Canada. So she's really not siding with independents or nationalists here. She's really siding with democracy. And she's saying Albertans have a lot of grievances. They deserve to be heard. This needs to go to a vote. She needs to actually start putting it on the petition, or she needs to put it on the ballot, whether the court stands in the way or not.
And Dara Robinson, thank you so much, says, smash the like button. And yes, it really does help us out. We are trying to get to 100 likes per stream because it helps kind of grow and let YouTube know that people like it, so to show it to more people. And especially now that clearly we're going to start seeing more and more pushes to sway the narrative one way and even censor and silence, I'm guessing, a lot of people as well.
Yeah, the next day it really pushes out the video anytime we hit to 100 likes. I see it almost doubles the amount of people that are viewing the video. So
thank you so much. And also I will say hello to KP for you, saying, I live in a small city. Most canvassers are handing in all their stuff, but I did witness 2 people signing today. And that's so great to hear that there are still people signing, even as we're getting closer and closer to handing in all the signatures.
Yeah, and I'm starting to gather up the articles for tomorrow's night show, and Marty up north is turning in his stuff as well. A lot of people are going to go one more day before they turn in their canvasser badges and all their signing sheets. So it's good that there's an awareness to turn in these sheets, because I think on the last time, not everybody was quite aware.
There was a bit of miscommunications, I think, but exactly. Luckily, now there isn't. And we will start moving into the actual campaign season for the October 19th referendum, which I think is the most important bit, and where a lot of more people can also get engaged and involved.
Yeah.
But let's move on to Alberta politics. And
that was only a few comments we had.
Yes.
Okay.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And starting with DCL saying, I want to live in Alberta, not Alberta, Canada. Alberta. This is our chance. This is our future. This is our choice. Alberta strong, proud, and free. It's time to say goodbye.
Yeah, and I think this was a perfect depiction of the future of Canada and the future of Alberta, put in a visual form here for everybody.
Especially because they don't want to properly manage their forests, so there's wildfires all the time, and they don't want to actually look at the sources. They just want to be able to point at the fires and say, oh, it's climate change.
Well, I think because BC is so close to Alberta, you're looking in the rearview mirror of British Columbia and what's going on with private property rights and everything else in that province.
And the destruction, I would say, even of the will of the people to do anything about it. Again, Victoria and Vancouver are the centers of the insane asylum, I would say. And we used to live right in the middle. Corey Morgan says, quote, if 95% of the province can't do anything substantial without permission from 5% of the province, the nation is broken. Western Standard says, Quesnel Indigenous determination will confront Alberta's impending independence crisis.
Yeah, and this is absolutely true. And this is going on in BC more than any other place. But with this 30 by 30 land grab Mark Carney is trying to do, he really wants to put federal protections in a lot of provincial lands. This is how he's going to federalize a lot of Canada and start getting control of the natural resource sector in provinces he just doesn't have any control over right now, like Alberta.
And right now, Alberta is also interestingly, the Alberta independence movement and the referendum and everything else are coming at pivotal points for the whole northern part of the continent, the American continent, because as Alberta independence moves forward and actually propels itself forward, we're seeing the trade talks, and where Alberta lies in that and within that will also be very interesting and gives even more reasons for Alberta to become independent. From Raquel Dancho saying, quote, to sell a tool to China, impossible. To sell a tool to India, impossible. To sell a tool to Europe, highly unlikely. Manufacturers won't survive without a long-term agreement with the U.S. Mr. Carney's pivot to China cannot rescue our industries in crisis.
Yeah, there were a lot of business leaders talking about how manufacturing is at an absolute crisis point in Canada. It's clearing out to the United States as well as Mexico right now, and they're saying it's never going to come back. This was a great... This was a great question period in front of Parliament, and Northern Perspective did a in-depth analysis on it. They had a lot of these individuals on their show to interview after this question period happened. I highly recommend checking that out. But yeah, we're about to see the Canadian economy really fracture, and we're talking about tens of thousands of jobs. And if those tens of thousands are lost, there are add-on manufacturing from there that's going to turn into millions.
But elbows up, Canada.
Very quickly say that if we're looking at diversifying into other markets, how can that, do you feel optimistic that there is an opportunity to also do that at this time?
Not a chance. To diversify into other, to sell to other markets?
Yeah, non-US. And
to sell for us outside of the U.S., to sell the tool to China, impossible. To sell a tool to India, impossible. To sell a tool to Europe, highly unlikely. Our world is U.S. integrated. This is what Kuzma's done. This is what we built our business on.
Very quickly say that if we're looking at diversity.
But that doesn't matter anymore.
Well, and that was an absolutely fantastic clip. And that was a liberal, I believe, asking that question. And they don't like the answers they were getting back. China is going to flood Canada with their manufacturing, not take Canada's manufacturing, because China already manufactures it for cheaper. And Chinese people aren't going to pay that added cost that you're going to have with shipping and everything else. And as far as India goes, well, their main export product to Canada is actually people, which we'll leave it at that.
But, and as Darryl Robinson was saying from CTV Edmonton, abundantly clear that Premier Smith is assisting the Separatists Forever Canadian petition organizers says, or Lukaszik's. So yeah, they're also going at it on that narrative.
And this is exactly what I was talking about them talking about Premier Smith supporting Alberta independence and stuff and things like this. There are a slew of articles. They're trying to put pressure on her to really go against Alberta independence and go against democracy in the process. She's been smart enough to walk a very delicate line, and she's done it magnificently. Pierre Poilievre did the opposite, and I don't think it's paying any dividends for him right now. Oh, we got a super chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. JP Alberta First saying, for the $5 super chat, saying, after the cigarette incident, I saw 2 more signing pop-ups 2 days later.
Fantastic. And the harder they come at us, the harder we're going to go. As soon as they're trying to bring in censorship and have the mainstream media talk about independent content creators, I say, okay, we'll just double up our show. We'll have an afternoon show and a night show for the audience that can't watch us at night. And hopefully the show gets a voice out there to an audience that wasn't previously exposed in the morning.
Exactly. And also, we will continue to try to interview as many people as we can. Again, if any of you have any suggestions, or if you're a canvasser or anybody that wants to speak and be interviewed by us to talk about the canvassing experience as well, which is what we want to focus as we go into the campaigning season now. And we are very glad we had Marty up north already to speaking with us, but our emails are open. I do read them. Eventually I do respond. Sometimes it takes me a little bit, but please do let us know if there's any more people you'd like us to interview, talk to, because the channel is open to anybody that wants a voice.
Well, and we have another big interview coming out tomorrow. We delayed posting it today because we had 2 lives today, and this was the first day of our morning show.
So we were trying to figure out how it's going to work. But back to this. Western Standard says, quote, Western alienation reaches its boiling point as Carney solidifies his majority.
Yeah, and this seems to be the tactic, is Western alienation. He wants to get him under his boot and under his thumb and tell him how it's going to be done. He's got the majority, so if you stick around to see what's going to happen to these Western provinces, you better believe it's going to get worse than it is now. That's why it's so important for this independence movement to push forward, no matter what the odds or the hurdles they put in the way of it.
Exactly. Oh, that was for the next section. Oops.
What was that?
That was for the next section. But I'll read your comments and then we'll go into it. Wild Rose says, just remember, folks, if our situation was hopeless, they'd have no need for propaganda. Alberta independence is inevitable. Exactly. And that actually shows that they're actually kind of scared about this. If they're starting to go as hard as to say, oh, everything's AI, everything's coordinated networks, don't listen to them, it means that there's quite a bit of truth coming out from the independent side.
Well, and they're having a tough time putting a narrative together, because if they sick Carney on us or Ninchi or Jason Kenney, it just sends more people to Alberta independence. And if they attack independent content creators that have followings within Alberta, that again is going to really set a blaze to the people to really go towards Alberta independence even further. That's why they're going after AI content creators, because they don't want to piss anybody off. They don't know how to attack this issue of Alberta independence. And it's going to be interesting what Jason Kenney tries to do in this debate. I wouldn't be surprised if he backs out. I mean, he's going against Keith Wilson. Yeah. That's the best representation Alberta independence has.
And the problem is, another problem I see with the narrative that they might try to propel and to continue to push, is that if they don't see an easy way to go at Alberta independence, maybe they'll just try everything as well. Like, they might not know what to try, so they'll just do everything they can.
No, they can't do that. If they throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, a lot of that's going to backfire on them. And the problem with trying everything, especially with something like Alberta independence, you could, if you fail at that, there's big consequences of really sending more people to the polls to vote for independence. So they're going to be very delicate at what they try. Usually you can, in a political battle, you can try anything and there's not a lot of consequences. In this particular case, there is. This referendum is different than any other referendum. This is a vote for the founding of a new nation, which is a very, very rare thing.
And also letting the world know and shifting the paradigm between the citizens and their government. So it isn't just worrying for Canada, Carney, but other countries around the world that have similar sentiments from their citizens, or have citizens that are to the point and to the breaking point. They've put them and they've gotten them to the breaking point. The governments have done to their citizens, might also be saying, oh, we don't want the sentiment to be growing here either.
Well, if they can't figure out how to pitch nationalism, or they can't figure out something that works, and Alberta independence continues to gather steam as it has been, and the polling continues to go up for Alberta independence, they're going to be in real trouble. And that's at some point, Carney may realize, I can't fight this thing. There's too much steam behind it. And he might resort to something like the Emergencies Act.
Or full-on censorship.
Yeah. But even with full-on censorship, that could backfire as well. We've seen it backfire during the truckers' convoy.
Exactly. Justin GP, hello, says,
good to see
hi,
ya.
Nat and Guy. Finally able to tune in while you're live. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for all the hard work you've been doing canvassing and for all the comments you've been leaving as well afterwards. I do read them. And it's great that you're still getting signatures and being out there and letting us know that even when you go out to rural communities, because I read the comments just left earlier, you are getting similar amounts of signatures as those canvassers that are in the bigger cities and getting the big numbers of signatures that comparatively you've been able to do a lot of work as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
And Sam says, well, at least Carney is showing us that what the pain threshold of Laurentians is. Wonder when the tipping point will be reached.
Yeah, this thing is getting real interesting from a political perspective. What they can, what they can't try, what their talking points going to be. A lot of the times, like. Man, there is so many talking points against national Canada because of the direction he's pushing Canada. Alberta independence is a no-brainer at this point.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy that when you look at the ability they have during debates or what the talking points they have are, it's mostly either economic or history based. Oh, but we are historically, we have so much history together. We fought wars together. You can't leave because of the history that they themselves have attempted to erase from the syllabus, from education, from all over the place, from buildings, statues, etc. Then with the economic side, any argument that they can give, like, oh, we can bring more pipelines, we can do more deals. Nothing's going to be as good as what an independent Alberta without the restrictions that are imposed not only on Alberta, the rest of the provinces too, but specifically on Alberta would be. So they're kind of left without many talking points other than shouting traitor and we hate you.
Well, which also doesn't work. They do have talking points, and their talking points are going to be economics, and they'll throw a bunch of pipelines and natural resource contracts at the end, and they're going to hope they've successfully framed the debate in the framework of economics, saying that if we can fix the economic issues, there's no reason to leave, and that's just not the case. First of all, you can't fix the economic issues because you're going to add so many strings and so many regulations to anything you give Albertans. It's not even worth it at that point. But number two, you do bring up a fantastic point about the history. We've seen Jason Kenney with his debate with Bruce Party really trying to lean heavy into the history. I think Keith Wilson is going to be prepared for that, and he should bring up the fact when they bring up any historical fact about the statues being brought down, about national Canada attempting to erase the history over the last 10 years and trying to make a totally new history. Mark Carney has even come out in some of his most famous speeches saying tradition isn't a way forward. And it's not the path forward. Okay, well,
and then saying that there's no unified Canadian culture either.
Well, if that's something he wants to say to national Canada, how are you going to try to pitch the opposite to Albertans?
Exactly. And also when they say, oh, we fought wars together, look at how they've treated the veterans, not just by offering them the May program instead of a ramp, but what they're doing to the military currently as well. Like, there is no good talking point that can't be where you can't shine the light on the actual things they've done because the examples are endless.
Yeah, we're going to go into what's going on with the National Canadian Military when we get into Alberta's Canada. And it is shocking. I was watching a video by a content creator, Bakes on Things, and he just did not hit the real talking points there. He's a national conservative. I was surprised he went so easy. I don't know if he just didn't know, but it's impossible not to know. Carney's recruiting from foreign militaries at this point, whether it's the CCP or the Indian military. He's fast tracking those soldiers for Canadian citizenship.
Well, at least they'll get tampons in their male bathrooms, because that is another priority of the Canadian military. But let's go into Alberta personalities, because I messed it up the first time.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
And starting with, again, the Western Standard, with Mueller saying Western alienation reaches its boiling point as Carney solidifies his majority.
Yeah, and the Western Standard has been absolutely fantastic for Alberta independence, and it's a voice inside of Alberta. This is probably, I didn't know much about the Western Standard before we started talking about independence, and now I'm thoroughly, thoroughly impressed with them.
Mm-hmm. And they also brought on a bunch of different voices that are having continuous shows as well. So
yeah, can you go back to the article? Sorry.
I closed it.
Oh, okay. I was actually going to talk about it. First, I wanted to talk about the Western Standard. Then I wanted to go to the article, but that's fine. Let's go to the second one. And I actually got something to say a little bit here. Harrison Faulkner is actually a nationalist. He does not want to see Alberta separate from Canada. That being said, he gives very fair reporting, and a lot of nationalist conservative content creators, whether they know it or not, are helping Alberta independence because they are showing the destruction of Canada, and on a regular basis, they're talking about the wrong direction Canada and Mark Carney are headed.
And the problem is they haven't got to the point where they connect those both those points. So the only right now with the majority, with the inability of conservative voices being heard on either parliament or in general and during elections, they haven't connected the dots of, oh, okay, nobody's listening to us, but there's all these issues. Well, there is some people that are trying to do something about it, and that is Alberta itself. Harrison Faulkner says,
you're out of breath there. Slow down a little bit.
Quote, in 1986, the census metropolitan area of Toronto had over 3.5 million people. Today, it has over 7 million people. In the 1980s, 14% of Toronto's population was a visible minority or non-white. Today, over 51% of Toronto's population is not minority, is visible, I would say.
Okay, yeah, and this was a fantastic video. I'm highly going to recommend people do go watch it. We're going to play a little bit of it. I think this is the trailer for it.
Have you ever seen old videos of Toronto and felt nostalgic, like you wanted to go back in time to experience it for yourself? Have you ever thought to yourself, where did that city go? Over the past 40 years, Toronto has changed immensely. It no longer looks the same. It no longer feels the same. And for many, it's not a better place. In 1986, Toronto was a large national city, a city of over 3.5 million people. Today, Toronto has over 7 million people. It is a global metropolis. In 1986, only 14% of the city's population was, quote, a visible minority.
And pause it for a quick second. And the federal government really wants to shut up national conservative content creators. This is also why they want to shut up Pierre Poilievre. They want to have a unified Canada where you don't say anything bad about Mark Carney or the direction the USMCA is going. That's why they want to install a Jason Kenney or a Doug Ford. That's the big talk of them getting Poilievre to step down and inserting one of those two, which would be absolutely tragic. I'm firmly on the side of Alberta independence, but as far as Canada goes, I still want the best for it once Alberta does separate. And I think Poilievre's probably the best you're going to get for a national politician, although I don't agree with him on his view and his stance on independence.
Birds non-white. Today, that number is over 51%. In 40 years, that is how much demographic change has happened in Toronto.
And what he did on this video, when you go watch the long version, is there were shot for shots that he got from old archive footage from the mainstream media, and he recreated those shots in the modern day. So it was very interesting what he did, and he's doing a fantastic job, even though he is a national conservative and doesn't want Alberta to separate. At least he's doing honest reporting, and that's what we should really be asking for from nationalists at this point.
And I will talk to the young people. I don't know how many young people are here, but I will say both Harrison, he's pretty young, I would say. I don't know how old he is, but he started out really young at least. And then seeing a lot of other Canadian content creators on the younger side, a lot of them on TikTok. I try not to consume TikTok too much, but that's where they are. And on X and making videos and independent content creators, both in Alberta, but also in a more national Canada or in other provinces, have been pointing this out. And I think they're getting to the point where they're able to speak for the youth in the sense that, as Harrison was saying there, the demographics have completely changed in Canada. They themselves don't have the opportunity that their parents or their grandparents had, for example. And a lot of them, both Harrison, but also I'm thinking of, for example, Dominion Society of Canada and a bunch of others that have started to become more active, have started to point out a nostalgia that they have for a country that doesn't exist and didn't exist when they were born, but that they look back and say, why didn't I get to experience that? Why didn't I get the safety and the opportunities, the job opportunities, the opportunity to build a family, buy a home, buy a car, have a good job, not have to compete with millions of other people that got here and even got better advantages and opportunities than I ever had. And I worked in 2 different Vancouver high schools, and the sentiment was there even a few years ago, where the young people were saying, well, I see old documentaries or I see old footage of Canada, and even though they never got to experience it, they want that because they didn't get it.
Well, what they're asking for, Alberta independence can actually provide. And that's the scary thing for Mark Carney, because he says the way things were is never going to be again. And when he says things like that, it's like, well, no, not necessarily. We can get pretty close to not even what it was. We can make it a lot better than what it was.
And it's very encouraging, too, to see older people. And even in that CTV clip we played in the morning, the older gentleman was saying, well, I want an independent Alberta because I want better opportunities for my kids, my grandkids. And it's a sentiment we also see a lot here or with older canvassers and people that might not get to see the full effects of an independent Alberta, but are conscious enough that they're saying, I want to do it for the future generation. I'm thinking forward of family and of the traditions that can be continued to be enforced and built, even if I don't get to benefit from it. And thinking of that legacy that I think many in other parts of Canada have completely forgotten and erased.
Well, it was interesting, something Jeff Rath brought up, and I had never really thought about it. And what he said was, Canada's not going to revoke your citizenship once Alberta gets independence, because a lot of people have dual citizenship when it comes to Canada all over the world. And that I was thinking about that for a minute, and I was like, yeah, they're probably not going to revoke your citizenship, so you'll be a Canadian citizen and an Albertan, although most Albertans probably don't want to be Canadians at this point. But you'll have a Liberal government going completely in one direction, while you have a strong Conservative government with Alberta going in the other direction. Now, I don't think these crazy Liberal policies are going to pay off in the end, but if they do, you still got Canadian citizenship, but what you're banking on is a strong Conservative government that's voted Conservative for the last 93 years in Alberta. It's something we really haven't seen with the Canadian economy. So Alberta could really thrive in ways that Canada could never.
And you'll also be able to see the direct comparison, the mirror-to-mirror comparison of an independent Alberta thriving, prosperous, and being able to be actually productive, and the downfall of Canada side by side, and the trade agreements with the US and everything else that Alberta can and will be able to move freely on, and what Canada continues to do, both with citizens, but also to the country itself.
Okay, that was quite the little talk we had.
Yes,
Let's get back into the stories.
Sam says, our grandparents and great-grandparents who gave their lives for Canada are rolling over in their graves in disgust at 2026 Canada. And we did get to hear, but I think it was in Great Britain, not in Canada, but the sentiment was the same. An very old veteran, like 90-something or 100 and something, talking about how he almost felt it was worthless to fight for the country because of the state that it is in right now.
Yeah, and it's a damn shame that it's coming to this where we have to separate from Canada in order to save traditional and Western values. Western values are dying. They're turning to Chinese values. They're turning to communist values. What I mean by that, you can look at censorship. Censorship is coming in mass in Canada. They already have 2 bills passed. There's another 4 waiting on the shelf. God knows what they're going to write up if they ever get a supermajority.
And free speech was one of those foundational tenets of Western democracies, and now they've completely forgotten about it and thrown them by the wayside and saw the Chinese model and said, oh, power control, we want that.
Democracy only works as long as you have free speech.
Wild Rose says, I was recently called by Forum Research on behalf of the Government of Canada. The questions they had were revealing regarding what the government cares about or not. I laid into them. Good. And tell them what they actually should be caring about, but that you don't care anymore because we're leaving anyway. Justin GP says, it was nice to see that Harrison was very impartial during the Party Kenny debate. Yes, and we pointed that out when we did our kind of small review. We did a video about it. And being able to have those debates and put them on his channel as well, and thinking that would be a good idea, because he moved to make that debate a while ago.
Absolutely.
So kudos to him as well. And the impartiality, as you mentioned. Kurt says, I think I'm going to do them Kenny trolling on X. Let us know how that goes.
The thing is, when we made the Jason Kinney video, we originally made it because he had that debate with Bruce Party, and a lot of people said, well, why are you giving him any airtime? It was obvious to me even back then he was going to be the main person they put up against Alberta independence. So much so, he's trying to relaunch his freaking career off of this. He sees the ability to become head of the Conservative Party if they can get Pierre Poilievre to step down. That would be an absolute disaster.
Smile to life every day. Hello, and thank you for being back. Saying if Carney says he is an Albertan, he should He should want Alberta independence. He already moved his company to the States. He doesn't want to stay in Canada himself. And his wife and his kids and his house, everything's in the States except him when he decides to be in Canada to just power grab all over the place.
Oh, God. He may have lived in Alberta
His
at
wife.
one point, but he's part of the CCP, and that's the Canadian Communist Party.
Escape from Canada says, I'm late again. Hello from Puerto Vallarta. Hello.
Oh, good to see you.
Hopefully the weather's a bit better over there than here, because here close to Mexico City, it's been pouring rain every day. Philip Solio from Louisiana. Hello, thank you for being here, saying, Trump may freeze his assets. Who knows? The little that he has got.
That would be phenomenal if he did that. That would be like Mark Carney using the Emergencies Act on Alberta independence, and then Donald Trump saying, okay, we're freezing your freaking assets. He's going to real quick pull that Emergencies Act back and say, no need for that.
True. But now let's go into more reasons for Alberta to become independent, or Alberta's Canada, and we name it that way because Alberta is the one that is holding up the rest of the country.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
Yes, and starting with continuing down the Kenny line and the corrupt conservatives line, Trending Politics says, breaking, Prime Minister Carney appoints former conservative leader Aaron O'Toole to new advisory committee on Canada-U.S. economic relationships.
Yeah, and when Aaron O'Toole was running, I'm ashamed to say I actually voted for him because that was right around the time we had decided, okay, well, we're going to leave the country. And I said I was willing to vote for anything other than Justin Trudeau and a liberal government. And I'm so ashamed that I actually did it. And this is why I'm so hard on even Pierre Poilievre today. But he's nothing but a liberal at this point. We have floor crossers from the Conservative Party, and then this kind of floor crossers that are going into committees. And they're starting to rig committees with conservatives that are going to vote liberal. And that was the word I was looking for at the beginning of the show, was committee.
Rig? Oh, okay. But we are seeing, and again, other than the floor crossers, but we're also seeing the Kenny thing and the potential Ford thing and this. Now, this is not potential, this actually happened, but hijacking and fully just mask off in the fact that it's a uniparty.
Yeah, we're really seeing the formation of a uniparty in real time right now, and in very, very quick fashion.
Well, it's becoming more evident because they're becoming more desperate.
Well, there's no hope, or I wouldn't say there's no hope, but they're not even really trying to get that USMCA worked out. They understand it's not going to happen, and they're trying to pivot to China. But what they need is national conservatives to shut the hell up about it. And that's why they're in quick fashion trying to make a uniparty, saying we have to get behind Canada. We can't bring up what's going on with these trade negotiations other than to say Orange Man bad, which isn't the case.
Yeah. But also from Juno News, quote, Conservative MP Kevin Watt, a former CTV news broadcaster, says Bell Media is shifting away from local news towards U.S. programming. I see NFL football on CTV stations on Sundays, he said, pointing to cuts in weekend newscasts. I asked the CRTC, is that allowed?
They're getting really concerned that mainstream media doesn't even have enough viewers to justify playing news on the weekend. How are they going to stop Alberta independence if they don't have their own propaganda arm?
Well, by saying that it's slopaganda and pointing at the fringe and saying he's AI when he's not.
I see, you got rid of a lot of your radio stations. I see NFL football now, an American product, on CTV stations on Thursday and on Sundays. And I'm not sure, when I even asked the CRTC, is that allowed? Like, I have a subscription to TSN. I pay for that. CTV is free. And now you're putting American football Thursday nights, which eliminates the local newscasts in many regions across this country.
Because that's what people want to see. They don't want to see what is being created by Canada, Canadians, or not even just the news, but even the programming and the shows that they so want to protect. They have to protect them and censor and cancel other programming because nobody wants to watch those.
Well, it's called the free market. And here's the thing. They want people that can't afford TSN and cable news. They want them to be indoctrinated with nightly news on a daily basis, and they want them to have no other options or very limited options.
Because it's their propaganda arm. That's why they subsidize it and pay for it.
We have no newscasts now at all locally on the weekends. So I see you're trying to get out of local news. I really do. And when you bleed 40 million, I'm right. You're going to make more changes that you've made in February of 2024. The staff across the country are really down because they're looking over their shoulder the next day fearing that you're going to make more cuts. I see.
And hopefully they do make more cuts and wake up. There is news shows on the weekend, and it's called social media, YouTube, Rumble. It's all over the place. There are hundreds of ways to get news now. The mainstream media just can't compete at this point. So they're choosing to make a profit by going with the NFL, and it makes perfect sense to me.
But I will also say maybe, and this is just a big maybe, and maybe this is what's going on, is that the local news stations can't really report on the news because it's getting worse and worse and worse. And at some point, the truth goes fully against the propaganda they're told they have to peddle. So they'd rather just not run their stories. I remember in Vancouver, there used to be a lot of different stories about crime, stabbings, etc. And they started to fall off, but then you would still see it on social media. You would still see that something happened because someone was there or took video, but it was never fully reported by the news because they wanted to avoid the topic.
The best way to install trust in CTV or Global or any of these other stations is to stop lying and stop reporting the news and start playing the NFL. You're going to have to lure people back through entertainment because you're not going to do it through the news because you're not able to tell the truth at this point.
Mm-hmm. And people have fully noticed. And I am very encouraged that Marty up north let us know that in Alberta, at least most people no longer even watch mainstream media or mainstream news because they know and they've seen through it. So that just shows the independent mind and spirit of the Alberta people. But Wiretap Media says, quote, David McGinty attributes the CAF's uptick of 7,310 new soldiers, young and old, to gutting physical and medical standards, which he called a major improvement to the recruiting process. Not one reporter asked how many recruits were immigrants.
Yeah, and we're going to go into 3 stories back to back here to show what's actually going on with the military. Number one, they're lowering physical requirements so they can get more soldiers in. We're going to show the other 2 parts of this in just a minute.
These new recruits, do they comment on the fact that we're living, as the Prime Minister says, in a more dangerous and divided world?
What I've heard in my roughly first year on the job from our new recruits and those who are applying is this. Young people and not so young people who are joining us are concerned. They want to join and they want to support what they have described to me regularly as a project. And the project they describe is Canada. They're very committed to this country. They want to see Canada remain secure and sovereign. Of course, the pay package, the standards that we brought to bear, the streamlining of the application process, the improvements we've made on the medical requirements, all of these things are beginning to bear.
The improvements we made on the medical requirements. No, you dramatically lowered the standards because people are so out of shape they can't reach them. And when you say there's enthusiasm to join the military, you're at 7,000 new recruits applying. That doesn't mean they made it through the requirement process. That's enough to maintain your level at what it's at, not to raise the level. So there doesn't seem to be a lot of enthusiasm. But I'm sure as the economy really starts to dip, you're going to see enlistment numbers go up because people are going to be absolutely desperate for a job. This typically happens in the United States as well. As the economy gets worse, recruitment does go up. Let's go into the second article.
But I will also say, it's not something to brag about that you lowered standards for soldiers and then say that you're doing it to protect the country. You can't do it if the soldiers aren't up to par. Well, and I agree with what the person said there at the bottom, that they didn't ask them how many of those were immigrants.
Well, he said improved standards. You're not improving the standards by lowering the standards. But the way you pitch it to the mainstream media, it's absolutely ridiculous. People are buying this hook, line, and sinker. And when I was watching Bakes on Things today to get the national conservative view, it was shocking. He didn't talk about that at all, that they're lowering standards and that's how they're meeting the quota. Let's go to the next article and see how else they're meeting the quota.
This might be one other way.
And he also didn't talk about this, which was shocking to me.
Corey Morgan says, and we've talked about this multiple times, Corey Morgan says, I can't think of a more dangerous idea than filling your armed forces with non-citizens. Juno News says, wow, the Department of National Defense changed its screening process for permanent residents, leading to a sharp increase in recruitment, which is what the other dude didn't want to say during his press conference.
And thank you to Corey Morgan and the Western Standard for actually pointing this out on a regular basis, because if it's only me, a small YouTube creator, saying this, people aren't always going to believe it. Yeah. But when I can point to the Western Standard and other major news outlets like Rebel News, it really gives it some validity, and people start to realize this is actually going on in Canada. And people just don't believe it when I'm talking about this in Mexico.
Yeah.
Our department made changes to the screening process for permanent residents, significantly increasing recruitment in this population. This was reflected in the report, which showed that over a 6-month period, 763 permanent residents were recruited compared to a 30-month period previously in which only 177 recruitments were achieved. Our department made changes to...
And they're going directly into and making cooperation programs with the Indian military, the Chinese military, to offer citizens to these soldiers in a quick fashion. This is how you absolutely riddle your military with spies.
And it's not like there's no precedent of that. Students have been caught being spies for either the CCP or other governments, and it took a long while, but expelled. And in the US, they've been able to expel them a lot faster from either universities or the country itself. But it's the fact that nobody is pointing this out is insane, and that they're trying to tout it as, oh, this is so positive. Everybody is very patriotic who wants to join the military. No, you're getting very different recruits and very special recruits from different parts of the world, not from Canada.
Well, when I'm watching national conservative content creators and they're pitching it like, oh yeah, Carney is turning it around, but he's not doing as good a job as he can, but they're not hitting the major, like,
worrying,
eye-opening talking points that make you say, what the hell is going on in Canada? Canada is becoming a real threat to the U.S., the way they're recruiting Chinese soldiers into their own military? Okay.
But Greg Lubimov also says Canadian Armed Forces recruitment at record high levels, highest recruitment intakes in 30 years, total verified applications of 44,000 plus, enrollment of 7,310 members, exceeding the target of 60. Didn't she just say that it was about 7,000 and something, no, 700 and something people with permanent residence that joined? The total authorized regular Canadian Armed Forces is 71,500. Right now they're at 67.
Well, and I put this in because this is what they are pitching to the Canadian public, how good they're doing, how they're getting these numbers up, are recruiting from foreign militaries, bringing people in that have PR and giving them citizenship. They're lowering the standards. You're not making them, and you're also recruiting from retired business class liberals within Toronto and Quebec.
We also did that story a while ago.
They want a certain ideology, and they're trying to clear out the old ideology of conservatism in the Canadian military. The problem with that, it's traditional conservatives that are the ones that typically join the military because their fathers and their grandfathers joined the military.
Today, I can announce that with my colleagues, the Canadian Armed Forces have reached the highest recruitment intake in over 30 years. Last year, Canada surpassed the regular force recruiting objective for the second consecutive year. What does that mean? It means the Canadian Armed Forces saw over 44,000 verified applications to join the regular force.
Pause it.
That is a
44,000 applications. These aren't actual soldiers that have actually come into the military. Okay, let's leave it there. I wanted to go a little bit in depth on that story because it has been kind of irking me a little bit how national conservatives are not covering this story in depth.
But also, with the whole elbows up and the whole, America is the most dangerous country to Canada right now, even though they said it was China. Carney himself said it was China about a year ago. The whole narrative propaganda of both nationalism, national socialism that they're trying to implement, the Canadian flag and the elbows up and all of that, and let's keep Canada unified. All of this all connects into the whole going against the U.S., the USMCA trade talks going bad. Everything lines up.
Well, no, not necessarily. Carney thinks he's playing a fast one on Trump. He's saying, we met our NATO 2% spending, but a lot of that is being written off as infrastructure projects as military spending. Trump knows this because he's called out Europe with the same behavior. And then when it comes to these enlistments of foreign soldiers into the Canadian military, he thinks Trump's only going to say, we've recruited, or we've had 50,000 applications or 70,000 applications. Our numbers are way up. But what they're actually doing are flooding foreign spies into the Canadian military that's going to have access to U.S. equipment. So he's trying to play both sides of the court here, and I don't think it's going to turn out well for him.
Smile to Life Every Day says, not surprising at all. Edward says, O'Toole is Emperor Palpatine. He does bear a resemblance.
Yeah, he's got I'll leave it at that.
Smile to Life Every Day says, O'Toole was the reason why we voted for the PPC.
Well, and O'Toole was the real reason Pierre Poilievre had so much hope behind him, because Pierre Poilievre didn't come off like a liberal and conservative clothing. He was talking about the real issues. A lot of what Poilievre said would actually fix Canada. The problem is the political system is rigged in Canada, where even if Poilievre wins, he can't win more than a minority government, and he can't win more than 1 or 2 terms, which is going to be instantly reversed as soon as another liberal government gets in. And this is one of the big grievances for Alberta and why we need Alberta independence. We need to unrig the political system.
But also during the campaign, he did pretty much nothing, and then too little too late. Now he's saying all the things that he should have been saying back then.
Yeah.
But even if he won, even with a majority, it would take decades to reverse what's been done to Canada. Escape from Canada says CTV should be playing China news. That would wake some up.
They already are half the time.
Yeah. They already are playing the propaganda part, at least. Philip Solio says, wow, didn't know this. Why not NFL and CFL? Because nobody watches the CFL. Again, nobody watches things that are made in Canada. Not even Canadians watch things made in Canada.
They do play CFL.
But who watches?
So, no, a lot of people don't watch it. But the best way to get CFL popular is when NFL gets popular, it has an add-on effect to it. So it's not the worst thing to play the NFL and say, yeah.
Justin GP says, the only news I watch is Nan and the Guy channel, soon to be called Nag channel. That doesn't sound so good, actually. And then says, NNG channel maybe airing to your TV set from the new country of Alberta.
Yeah.
Soon enough.
Until Carney tries to ban us, along with every other Alberta independent station there is.
Exactly. Actually, Nag would be funny. Philip Solio says, NNG channel, I hear ya. Is there an NNG channel somewhere?
I don't know.
But I like Nat and the Guy.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Sam says, the insanity of setting up a system where only non-citizens have firearms is staggering. And we've also touched on the fact that it's not just within the military itself, but also hiring hiring Chinese, well, almost the same thing, hiring Chinese security forces that are allowed to have banned weapons that Canadian citizens cannot have. Explain it better than I did.
The natural resource sector in Canada, and specifically Alberta, which is surprising, is now outsourcing contracts to the CCP through Chinese security agencies who they're allowing to bring banned firearms into Canada, which is absolutely crazy at this point.
The firearms that they're trying to ban and remove and take away from their citizens, they're allowing foreigners to patrol the natural resources of Canada.
Step one, allow them illegal firearms to protect natural resource sector. Step two, send them after Canadian citizens to take their firearms.
Sean says, hold on. Why is it not coming up? No, hold on. Sean says, although I noticed the sweater along the arm ends match Nat's sweater. That's nice. You guys should always match on air. I guess we do match.
I'm not doing matchy with Nat. Just we'll make that clear.
But it's funny because I said, should I change? Because I wore this during our morning show. And you said, no, that looks weird. And you changed.
Well, we both took like a 30-minute nap between shows. And
we took out the dog and did a bunch of other things.
But you slept in your sweater, so you just came back on like that. And I slept in my shirt, my tank top. So then I was like, okay, I just grabbed something. Although it was cold outside when I walked the dog, but when I'm in here, this sweater is much too hot for me.
Yes. Philip Solio says the U.S. military up as well, but they are setting some very different standards than the Canadian military.
Wait, repeat that?
That the U.S. military is up as well.
What do you mean the U.S. military is up?
Like the recruits are going up.
Oh, the recruitment's going up, but for a very different factor. It was going way down under Joe Biden. Under Donald Trump, he's clearing out a lot of the ideology, and people are proud to be American again, and they're wanting to join the military, especially the military in the States is very intergenerational. If your dad was in the military and your grandfather was in the military, you're probably going to be in the military. But under Biden, people were getting out en masse and they were telling their sons and daughters, do not join. I know this is part of the family heritage, but this is not the direction we want America to go. But now they're coming back in. Yes. It's going to be a shame if they signed a long-term contract, though, and then Gavin Newsom gets in.
Yes. But Hegseth told even the generals to stop being fat, which was a good message and was something that was lacking and missing for a very long time.
Well, and then you had transgendered 5-star or 4-star generals running a lot of the policy for the military. What the hell do you think is going to come up if somebody's re-enlistment contract comes up? They're going to say no freaking way.
Exactly. Republic of Alberta says 100,000 immigrants took the signing bonus and then dropped out. As usual, Alberta has to pay for it. Sean says, that's good now that Canada is, for the first time since the 80s, Canada met the 2% required NATO membership. More soldiers in the Arctic is needed to protect all of North America, but you don't want those soldiers.
Hold on, but it's a lie. That 2% that they were supposed to meet for NATO, Europe and Canada are doing the exact same thing. They're building bridges, roads, and they're writing it off as military spending. That's the thing. And then they're putting big numbers out, like they're buying all this equipment. A lot of these contracts haven't gone through yet, and they're meeting their 2% by building infrastructure projects. And Trump knows this right now. He's called out Europe like 3 times about it in public speeches. If he knows Europe's doing it, I'm sure he knows Canada's doing it as well.
Republic of Alberta says 40% of them got serious frostbite and were medically discharged.
Well, yeah, we covered that frostbite story, and it was shocking that the Canadian military was trying to play tough when they were doing cross-training with the Americans, and the American says, it's not safe to be out here. We're going to pull our soldiers off the field. The Canadians left them out there, and then a large majority lost trigger fingers and got frostbite. But the Americans are really looking, when that happens to a cold weather country and you don't even know how to do proper Arctic training, it looks like your country's incompetent.
And when you don't have the equipment too, because they're missing a bunch of different types of equipment, all from the way from housing to beds to sleeping bags to jackets. They're missing everything as well. And those stories have also been suppressed by the mainstream media.
Well, and it's the same thing that Europe's saying we're going to invest $800 billion to revamp our military because we have a conflict on the border with Russia. None of that's been invested. They actually don't have the money. They don't know where they're going to get it. So they're making promises they can't actually keep.
Sean says, Pierre can still eat a mean apple, guy. I think Trump wanted to go after Canada Canada's one-way tariffs on dairy and lumber, so wanted Carney as PM, as Prime Minister.
Yeah, and I'll say this, again, I'm firmly on the side of Alberta independence. That really is the way forward, in my opinion. I've already left Canada. I voted for my own independence. That being said, once Canada continues without Alberta, once it separates, I'm fine with Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre should be the prime minister of that country because who else are you going to get? Erin O'Toole or Doug Ford or Jason Kenney or God knows who else they're going to put in. Maybe they'll have a liberal cross the floor to the Conservative Party just to run for leader. I don't put it beyond Carney at this point.
Yeah. I don't put it beyond any of them, honestly. Sean says, yeah, it's cold up there. and they don't have the necessary equipment or training or anything to be able to deal with it as they were able to deal with it before.
Yeah.
Sam says, I'm sending you matching ugly Christmas sweaters. Thank you. I don't know if you'd wear it.
I would wear it, but...
But what?
Nothing.
Sean says, I told him to get rid of the sweater. Don't know why that didn't come up. Flannel guy.
One time
oh yeah, because okay, now it makes sense because you said, oh, but you're matching anyways. But because he said, get rid of the sweater, wear a flannel.
Yeah, I'm gonna wear a flannel. The sweater's too hot, so I'm not wearing. I just grabbed it real quick because I was in a rush for the second show. This is our first day doing a morning show and a night show.
That might be why we're a little off today, right now. Sorry, but we do match.
Okay, I'm not playing that. I'll take this off right now.
I don't like matchy either. Republic of Alberta says,
maybe we should just get shirts that say Nat and the guy. You would love that. And then little matchy cups.
Yeah, I do.
I'm not doing
cups.
No. I'll stick with my cup that you broke the lid to, by the way.
That was my cup.
Yeah, it's mine.
That you stole, and then I accidentally broke my lid cup. Republic of Alberta says, wild animals always wander onto remote leases. The Chinese aren't so good with rifles. Every remote drilling operation has watchmen who protect workers, but you don't want them to be coming from the CCP.
Yeah, and you don't want crazy policies to authorize CCP members to be guarding natural resource sector in Canada. Now, I understand Chinese companies own a lot of these mining companies because I used to work in mining, and that's how they're able to sway legislation in Canada, try to get rid of unions, and I'm almost positive this is how they got the Chinese security sector approval to guard their sites because they own those companies. That's completely unacceptable in my opinion, and especially in Alberta of all places.
Sean says, can I commission Andy Masterson to make action figures of you two? Funnily enough, I know a lot of the drama with Andy Masterson because I used to be involved in that world. Not personally, but I used to watch it a lot. But sure, if you want to, that would be funny. And so that would be so cute. Go ahead. But then I want to see them. Troglodyte says, no YouTube notification, shocked. Maybe especially because we talked about how the CTV, what the CTV report was.
No, not the CTV report. If you watched our morning show, we reported on that story as well. And the Canadian government said they're directly reaching out to YouTube to make sure that any standards that are violated, they're going to get those channels taken down. So
we're real people. Roland, hello, says with banned guns. Oh no, the message didn't show up.
What was that?
That was probably censored by YouTube, I'm guessing, because of that last one. But send it again if you can, so I can read it. Or we're also streaming on RUMBLE, and if any of your messages get censored on YouTube, you can always go over to RUMBLE and send them again, and I'll read them.
Okay, let's go into Alberta and the World, because I want to try to get to the Saskatchewan email that a viewer sent us. I found it very interesting. Although I disagree with everything that's in it, I think it's a tactic that the federal government might try to use.
Okay, so let's go into Alberta and the World, and then get to the
email.
Yes. Little bit of a hiccup there, but we're back. CBC Watcher says, quote, Janice Charette, Canada's lead negotiator, is certainly sounding a different tone than Carney on the U.S., saying a hugely important thing, but important to keep in mind at the same time that we do actually have the very best trade deal of any of the major U.S. trading partners.
They know that trade deal is disappearing. That's why you're hearing this talking point less and less. We have the best trade deal. We have the best trade deal. Well, no, Mexico's about to have the best trade deal because Canada's messing up their negotiations in royal fashion.
Just start with what might be a statement of the blindingly obvious, which is that I call it USMCA these days because I spent all my time in the U.S., but the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement is a good agreement. It is an agreement that brings benefits to businesses, to employers, to workers and families and communities in the United States, in Mexico, and in Canada. It's really the framework that underpins this marketplace.
And it was a great trade deal for Mexico and Canada for a long, long time, but it didn't benefit the United States quite as much. And the big issue here is that they keep talking about they desperately want the same trade deal. They want it to be renewed. Trump's already made it clear he wants the United States to be the hub, and he wants two separate trade deals, one with Mexico and then a separate one with Canada. They need to understand that's the framework Trump's going to work in. He's not going to include all three countries in one big trade deal.
Which is the envy of the world. And it's just a few numbers. You know, the North American market, 506 million consumers with a combined GDP of $42 trillion. Canada is the #1 customer of the United States. In fact, 39 million Canadians buy more goods from the United States than 2.8 billion people from the combination of Japan, the UK, and China together. So we are an important customer for them. Our FDI into the United States, foreign direct investment into the United States, is almost 2x what the US FDI is into Canada.
Okay, you can leave it there. And she's saying how much the United States needs them, and they're going to have to change their framework because that's not going to be the case. The United States is going to, if Canada doesn't reach this deal soon, Trump's just going to hollow out slowly industry by industry until Carney's willing to bend. And he's not trying to necessarily empty out all these manufacturing industries into the United States. He's also trying to empty them out into Mexico. He doesn't want the low-end manufacturing in the United States, actually. He was happy to let Canada or Mexico have it. It just happens to be Mexico was willing to cooperate and Canada wasn't, which is a shame because a lot of people are going to get hurt in Canada because Mark Carney wants to play games.
Yes, elbows up. But let's see the consequences of censorship and what probably is coming to Canada shortly as well. Basil the Great says,
oh my God. There was another article I meant to add in today. I'll talk about it real quick and I'll put it in tomorrow. They just banned cigarettes for everybody that is born in 2009, I believe, in the UK. So nobody can now smoke cigarettes that's born after 2009. I think it has to reach final approval, but yeah. They want to get rid of cigarettes completely.
Met Police win the right to turn Britain into a police state. The court battle on facial recognition software has concluded in favor of the Met Police using it. Absolutely dark times ahead for Britain. 1984, we are finally here. I think we've been here for a while, honestly.
Good afternoon. This legal judgment is a significant and important victory for public safety. It confirms that the Met is right and acting lawfully to use the best modern technology to reduce crime and keep pace with the evolving threats that we face.
And yet they don't reduce crime. They reduce sentences of the people that do the worst, most heinous crimes just because they have X, Y, or Z characteristics that they've decided allows them to continue to do their crime sprees.
Live facial recognition works, and it's one of the biggest breakthroughs for policing. It's actively removing thousands of dangerous and wanted offenders from London streets, including individuals who pose a serious and ongoing threat to our communities, including those wanted for the most serious offences such as rape, domestic violence and child sex offences.
How in the hell is how is facial recognition removing these people when they're literally given extremely light sentences?
They know who they are.
They've served their sentences and then they're putting them back on the street. Like,
they already know who they are because they let them out.
The technology is highly accurate and fair, and we've already made more than 2,100 arrests using it. Last year alone, more than 3 million faces walked past the cameras, resulting in only 12 false alerts, none of which led to an arrest. Crucially, every alert is reviewed by trained officers before any action is taken. Today, the court has been clear. Our use of live facial recognition is lawful and supported by our strong safeguards.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And I was watching into facial recognition. They were using it in Nevada as well. They used it at a casino, and then they brought the police in because it was a 100% match, and the guy wasn't the same guy. And this happens quite frequently, more frequently than they want to admit. And this is a big problem because if it's 100% match, you should have seen the confidence of the officer when he was arresting the guy. He was just being a complete dick to him, being very physical, just manhandling him. And that becomes a problem when you're arresting the wrong suspect later on and the guy was trying to be cooperative. But he thinks he has the authority because the computer said it's the right guy.
But then again, this is the same country that is arresting people over Facebook posts.
Yeah.
Even people that aren't even from the UK, a Canadian woman and also an American woman, both got arrested with cops in their house, sitting in their living room saying, oh, you posted offensive things, so now you have to come with us.
Privacy and free speech used to be the cornerstone of Western society. Because we're flooding our borders with massive amounts of immigrants in low trust societies, we're now having to take away free speech and we're having to take away a lot of privacy.
Yes.
We're not having to do, but the government is deciding that's the best case scenario. Alberta gets its independence. Privacy and free speech need to be a cornerstone of that society.
For citizens, and transparency should be the cornerstone for the government.
Okay, this next thing's going to take a little while to go through, so let's try to get into it. I do want to read the whole thing, though.
It did show up. Okay.
I thought it was crucially important because I think these are a lot of the talking points they're going to use. Now, I don't agree with any of this, and I'll kind of give counters as we go through it, but...
So Sam, one of our subscribers, sent us this email from someone else, but I will read through it. I can't read over there, so I'm going to read over here because I can't see that far.
Yeah.
It says, it's quote, the prairie pivot, how Saskatchewan's energy leverage can pressure the world into peace and why Alberta cannot afford to leave. For decades, Saskatchewan has been the quiet, reliable engine of Canadian agriculture and mining. But in the shifting geopolitical landscape of 2026, the province finds itself in a position it has never occupied before, the fulcrum upon which Western energy security, global food stability, and the path to a negotiated peace all rest. This is not hyperbole. It is a function of geology, geography, and the stark new realities of global trade.
Okay, after each paragraph, we'll kind of stop here. But I will say this entire fundamental premise is going to go off of that Saskatchewan is going to save Canada and stop Alberta from separating. My premise is Alberta is going to separate, become its own independent country. And you're completely right with a lot of the statistics. Saskatchewan is very strong as well. And that's why I'm hoping to help Saskatchewan get their independence as soon as Alberta breaks free. I think the framework Alberta is using can be used by Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan has the tools to pressure Ottawa, Washington, and Brussels toward a negotiated settlement with Russia. But before it can wield that power on the world stage, that's very hopeful, it must first settle closer to home. It must make its neighbor to the west understand a simple, unavoidable truth. Alberta needs Canada, and Saskatchewan is the proof.
Okay, I completely just disagree with that. And to think that Saskatchewan is going to pressure Russia, United States to end a conflict is absolutely ridiculous. But Saskatchewan does have potash and a lot of other things Russia does provide. That's the talking point they're trying to lean into. They're just over leaning into that talking point.
the new Saskatchewan arsenal, potash, uranium, and oil. Saskatchewan is no longer just a breadbasket. It is an energy and resource superpower in waiting. The province is projected, how are you going to do that with all the government restrictions? Whatever. The province is projected to attract over $7 billion in mining investment in 2025, leading the nation. It is the world's largest producer of potash, accounting for approximately 1/3 of global production, and the world's second largest uranium producer. Its oil and gas sector is Canada's second largest.
Yeah, and I will say this, they are really lying in wait. They're being stifled by the Canadian federal government, and this is why Saskatchewan needs to break free. That paragraph right there is the best reason Saskatchewan does need to break free, because they could be a global superpower, especially with a good trading partner like Alberta next to them and like the United States, which they're very much in line with both of those trading partners.
This resource wealth is not just an economic statistic, it is a geopolitical weapon. As sanctions continue to disrupt global fertilizer markets, with Russia and Belarus accounting for roughly 40% of global potash exports, the world is looking to Saskatchewan to fill the void. This gives the province a seat at the table when it comes to global food security. But first, a word to the West.
And you don't need a seat at the table for global food security. What you need is to develop these sectors so you have your own food security, and the partners that are right next to you, like the United States and Alberta, cut them in on the action. They want to trade with you. They have things that you need. You obviously have things that they need. And when it comes to America, you want their market. You have potash. It's a perfect relationship there. Why Mark Carney hasn't been leaning more heavily into this, and he's been doing the opposite by stifling Alberta and Saskatchewan?
But first, a word to the West. The Saskatchewan lever over Alberta, the price of going it alone. For years, Alberta's political discourse has been punctuated by frustration with Ottawa and occasionally whispers of separation. The events of 2025 and 2026, tariffs, pipeline deals, and volatile oil prices have only amplified those voices. But any honest conversation about Alberta's future must begin with a map, and that map shows Saskatchewan squarely between Alberta's oil sands and the rest of Canada. Saskatchewan possesses two powerful, legal, and entirely reasonable economic levers that it could and should exercise if Alberta ever seriously pushed a path outside of Confederation.
Yeah, and this is where they're going to talk about really trying to play hardball with Alberta, and this is why it's important for Alberta and Danielle Smith right now to start getting pipelines that go from Alberta directly to the United States and don't cut through Saskatchewan.
Yes. Number one, the transit-free reality. Nearly every major pipeline carrying Alberta crude to eastern Canadian and U.S. markets crosses Saskatchewan soil. The Enbridge mainline system, the TransCanada's NGTL system, and the Keystone Pipeline Network all traverse Saskatchewan territory.
And let's leave it here just for a second, because they cut into Saskatchewan right close, kind of down by the border. So it would be very easy to tap into that line before it goes into Saskatchewan and just build the remaining pipeline to the U.S. So this is something Alberta can fix very quickly, and Saskatchewan doesn't have as much leverage over Alberta as they think they do.
Mm-hmm. Within Canada, interprovincial trade is constitutionally protected and completely messed up, and pipelines operate under federal jurisdiction. But if Alberta were an independent nation, that protection vanishes. Saskatchewan would have the sovereign right to impose a transit tariff on every barrel of Alberta oil crossing its land. Consider the volume. Alberta exports approximately 4.3 million barrels of crude per day. A significant portion of that moves through pipelines that pass through Saskatchewan. Even a modest transit fee of $2 to $5 per barrel would represent billions of dollars annually siphoned directly from Alberta's bottom line and into Saskatchewan's treasury.
Well, and I will say this, you'll get $2 to $5 per barrel until Alberta's done tapping into that pipeline and cutting you out of it. They don't have to build a whole new pipeline. They're going to take the existing pipeline, tap into it, and build it directly to the United States. I'm fine with paying you $2 to $5 per barrel if you want to play hardball like that.
Where were we? This is not a threat, it is a statement of geographic and legal fact. Separation makes Alberta a landlocked, prize-taking client state with a new tool booth between it and its customers.
And let's just talk about the trade Alberta does eastward towards Saskatchewan and towards the rest of Canada and even to British Columbia. 70% of their trade goes directly to the United States. That's just a fact. And once they unlock and create a new trade deal between the United States and Alberta, they're not going to need your east-west trading routes to be quite frank, you want to play hardball, it's going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt Alberta because it's going to cut off BC to the rest of Canada.
Number 2, the premium on Saskatchewan light crude. Alberta's refineries, particularly those in the Edmonton area, are configured to process a blend of heavy oil sands bitumen and lighter hydrocarbons used as a diluent. A significant portion of that light sweet crude comes from Saskatchewan's Bacan and Viking plays. Under the current Canadian Economic Union, this oil flows freely across the border at market prices. If Alberta were outside Canada, Saskatchewan would have no obligation to sell its light crude to Alberta refineries at par. Saskatchewan could, and logically would, charge a premium for its product or divert it entirely to more lucrative U.S. markets via its own rail and pipeline infrastructure.
Let me just explain something that's going to happen here. They're acting like Saskatchewan's this big powerhouse of all these natural resources, which I think if Saskatchewan gets its independence will be, and it will be great for Saskatchewan. But you have Canada stifling the natural resource sector. And what's going to happen when Alberta breaks free, all the investment that would want to go into Saskatchewan is going to flood into Alberta because of the deregulation, because of the open markets. Saskatchewan is going to be hurting if Alberta gets its independence up until the point Saskatchewan gets its own independence. I'm not against Saskatchewan in any way, shape, or form. I'm actually very, very pro Saskatchewan independence. But when a nationalist writes an article like this saying we're going to play hardball with Alberta, you better wake up, because it's Alberta that's going to be playing hardball with the rest of Canada.
The cost to Alberta's refining sector would be immediate and severe. The differential between Western Canadian Select, WCS, and West Texas Intermediate already costs Alberta billions. Adding a Saskatchewan premium would widen that gap further, making Alberta's oil even less competitive on the global stage. The Alberta equation recalculated. When framed in these terms, the question Albertans should ask themselves changes. It is no longer what does Canada do for us? It becomes what would it cost us to leave? The answer is measured in billions of dollars of transit fees and refinery input costs, money that stays in Alberta today because Alberta and Saskatchewan are partners in a shared federal economic space.
Yeah, the first year, we build that pipeline that's going to tap into the existing one to get Saskatchewan out. It's going to cost us a little bit, and we're well aware of that.
Remaining in Canada provides Alberta with 3 critical advantages that are more valuable now than ever. Number 1, market diversification without tolls. A united Canada has political and economic weight to build pipelines east, west, and north that Alberta needs to access global markets, all without paying a fee to Saskatchewan or British Columbia. 2,
okay, hold on. First of all, it might not be paying a fee to Saskatchewan or British Columbia, but it's paying massive fees in climate taxes and all these other regulations to the federal government that's refusing to build any of these pipelines and kind of boxing Alberta in at this point and making it landlocked as it exists as part of Canada. In order to unblock that, Alberta needs leverage over British Columbia and the rest of Canada so it can actually freely trade its goods.
Interprovincial alliances. The recent MOUs between Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario demonstrate the power of a unified bloc. Together, these provinces have the political clout to reshape national energy and trade policy. Apart, they are competitors bidding against each other for the same American customer.
These MOUs are complete bullshit. They come with so many strings and so many remittance payments to the federal government. Once you break free, one contract in a free Alberta is worth 10 contracts in a Alberta that's under the Canadian federal government's thumb.
Number 3, shared risk. While equalization is a point of contention, the broader financial architecture of Canada provides a buffer that a standalone petrostate subject to transit fees and premium input costs simply could not sustain. The path forward is clear. Alberta's prosperity is inextricably linked to Canadian unity, and Saskatchewan holds the keys to that understanding.
It puts too much authority in Saskatchewan's hands here. But I do like the fact that I'm hearing these talking points for the first time, and I think the federal government's going to try to ramp up some of this as
well, and especially because they must be worried that Saskatchewan, there is some independence movements in Saskatchewan as well.
Yeah, they're going to try to frame Saskatchewan as Saskatchewan's firmly on the side of federal Canada, just like it says here, but it's completely not. The more likely circumstances it's going to work itself out is Alberta goes first, Saskatchewan goes second. We have 2 very independent, wealthy nations going to cooperate with each other.
Mm-hmm. Part 1, pressuring the Canadian government with unified prairie power. When With Alberta firmly in the fold, the combined weight of two Western energy provinces becomes irresistible to Ottawa.
Absolutely. Prairie power. Once they unite as independent nations, they're going to be unstoppable.
Yeah.
As soon as you keep yourself tied down to Ottawa in any way, shape, or form, you're going to reach failure and drive yourself off a cliff.
Prime Minister Mark Carney's government has made it clear that it wants to fast-track energy projects and reduce reliance on the U.S. market. But as energy analysts note, whatever grand plans the Prime Minister has, he has to have the provinces on board. Saskatchewan and Alberta, now aligned and clear-eyed about their mutual dependence, can present a unified front to Ottawa. Their demand is simple: use Canadian energy and agricultural dominance as the foundation for a Canadian-led peace initiative with Russia. The offer is cooperation on federal critical mineral strategies, pipeline expansion, and carbon policy. The condition is that Ottawa takes a proactive, independent role as a peace negotiator, leveraging the promise of a stable, long-term Canadian resource access to bring Russia to the table.
Okay, first of all, this whole wet dream of pressuring Russia. Russia is a completely independent nation. They're much like Saskatchewan and Alberta. They're much like Canada for the global south and the type of resources they have. Canada should be playing the same role for the Western nations, yet they're not, because they're not developing their natural resources or their food sectors.
Part 2, pressuring the United States with a fertilizer and fuel card. The United States is energy dominant, but it is not energy independent. American reliance on Canadian crude oil remains high, with imports at 4.2 million barrels per day. More critically, the U.S. has a strategic vulnerability: uranium and potash. Saskatchewan is the largest potash producer in the world and a top-tier uranium supplier. The U.S. relies on Canadian potash to fertilize its fields and is actively seeking to reduce its dependence on Russian and Kazakh uranium. By working together, Saskatchewan and Alberta can make the security and affordability of the American food and energy supply explicitly conditional on U.S. cooperation in a broader
They want to play hardball with
framework.
they're trying to play hardball with the U.S. where even more so than normal. You're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to open up trade barriers, no tariffs either way. Right now, Canada gets to tariff the United States, and they expect not to be tariffed back. When Saskatchewan and Alberta gets their independence, it's going to be tariff-free trade. And you're not going to want to play hardball with your biggest trading partner. Both Saskatchewan and Alberta are very reliant on the U.S., and that's the biggest market. And the United States will be very happy to have two new trading partners that can provide a lot of natural resources. You don't need to play hardball with them.
The corollary is that Canada can choose to supply those needs only if its largest customer helps bring an end to conflict, destabilizing global markets. Part 3, pressuring the European Union with the promise of Arctic stability. Europe's energy and food security remain precarious. The continent cannot feed itself without fertilizer, and a significant portion of that market is supplied or prized by Saskatchewan. Furthermore, the Arctic Bridge corridor linking Churchill, Manitoba to Murmansk, Russia, represents the shortest, most efficient supply chain between the heart of North America and Eurasia. A unified prairie voice backed by Ottawa can present Europe with a compelling proposition: long-term stable Canadian energy and potash contracts facilitated by a peaceful and operational Arctic trade corridor.
Well, and this is why I've been saying Mark Carney is trying to march Canada closer to the EU. They want to join the EU with Canada because the original plan was World War III with Russia, take the $74 trillion in assets, and then be top of the globe for another 50 or 100 years. That's not working out so well for them now. So now they're looking at Canada and saying, well, if we join Canada with the EU, will we get the same amount of natural resources as we would with Russia? Especially because Mark Carney hasn't been accessing those natural resources. But once he combines Canada with the EU, he will start unlocking those and giving a lot of those contracts to the globalists. Oh, sorry,
we're almost done, but let me go to JP Alberta first.
Thank you, JP.
Thank you so much to JP Alberta first for the $5 super chat, saying Nutrien is spending $1 billion to build an export facility off of the U.S. West Coast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you understand it?
Nutrien is spending
$1 billion.
$1 billion
to build an export facility off of the U.S. West Coast.
Yeah, I think they're trying. Okay. Never mind. Yeah.
But
nothing. Just keep going.
Because I didn't understand it. Rafa says, hello. Thank you so much, Rafa, for the 100 peso super chat.
Oh,
and
thank
you for being here as well. I hope everything is going well. Rafa is one of our longest and oldest supporters, so thank you for being here, saying hello, greetings from the abandoned club. Because I paused my Spanish shows and my Spanish channel for a month while we figure out what to do with this channel first, and then I'll start again with the Spanish one. But thank you for being here, Rafa. Okay.
I'm thinking he's probably talking about building a $1 billion export for shipping natural resources and things like that.
Okay.
Well, that's my guess, but maybe he'll clear it up for us.
Okay.
Okay.
You don't have to super chat if you want to clear it up. You don't have to super chat if you want to clear it up. Hold on.
And yeah, I thought this was very important. So we went over our normal time. Usually we would end at 6:30, but I really wanted to get into this email that he wrote because I vehemently disagreed with it. But I thought there was a lot of good talking points. It was just from the wrong perspective, which was from a nationalist perspective rather than an independent Saskatchewan.
Thank you, JP. I said you didn't have to super chat. Thank you for the $2 saying that is to ship potash. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Thank you. Got
yeah.
it. Thank you for clarifying that, and thank you so much for the super chats as well.
But from a potash facility, I would assume they would be able to ship out other natural resources as well, or it would be easy to expand that.
Okay, almost done, and then I'll read all the rest of your comments. So we're going to be a little bit longer today. But where were we? Facilitated by a peaceful and operational Arctic trade corridor in exchange for European diplomatic weight applied toward a negotiated settlement. This is not about abandoning Ukraine. It is about creating an economic architecture so compelling that all parties, including Russia, have a vested interest in maintaining the peace. Conclusion, the power beneath the wheat fields. The old Canadian dynamic of West versus Ottawa is a luxury of a bygone era. The new reality demands an alliance of the prairies, Saskatchewan, and Alberta standing shoulder to shoulder, leveraging their collective resource wealth on the world stage.
And this is, it's absolutely ridiculous. They think that Saskatchewan has this much leverage over Russia. Russia has all the exact same natural resources, and they're supplying it to the global south. How is Canada or Saskatchewan having natural resources as well going to put any pressure on Russia? I just don't understand that. The U.S. could obviously put military pressure, but I think a compromise needs to come between Europe and Russia. Europe just does not want to compromise. They want to wait Donald Trump out and then escalate this war.
Saskatchewan has the power to remind Alberta that the true cost of division is not measured in political slogans, but in transit fees and refinery premiums. Together, they have the power to remind Ottawa, Washington, and Brussels that the path to peace runs through a fertilizer plant in Lanigan and an oil well in Bakken. The power to change the world is buried beneath the wheat fields. It is time to start digging together.
And let me speak directly to the Saskatchewan people. The ability to change the future is in your hands. You need to wake up. Scott Moe is not taking down any of these barriers. If anything, he's putting more barriers up to independence. It's time to start moving and start moving in quick fashion before this 30 by 30 project that Mark Carney is doing starts to federalize a lot of your lands and put more roadblocks in the way of independence. If you get your independence, you are going to be a prosperous and strong country just like Alberta. As long as you stick with Canada, none of that's going to be possible because Canada is going to continue to make sure you're under their thumb and you can't access your natural resources. Like it said right there, that was coming directly from a nationalist, I'm assuming. You could be a huge economic power because of your natural resource sector. It's Mark Carney and the federal government holding you back and holding you down through regulation.
Thank you so much to real Steven Jensen for the $5 super chat, saying the East is living in a delusional bubble, thinking that they will still have the power over the West. Alberta independence.
Oh, now, not only Alberta independence, Saskatchewan independence as well. And these need to be two independent countries standing on their own, working together.
Canada is too big of a country, as both Keith Wilson and Jeff Rath have said on multiple occasions.
And what do you think about that? Sorry, I talked a lot. I was upset.
No, it's good.
I was upset when I read the email the first time, but I realized, yeah, these are good talking points I want to address.
Well, you've done a lot more research, for example, into the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. You got really fixated on that for a while. You used to talk about it a lot when we did geopolitics, so that's more your area. But it seems like they might seem like good arguments to those that haven't fully looked into it or haven't fully seen why independence would be the way, especially for Alberta, but also Saskatchewan. And it might convince some people, but as you were saying, it might be those might actually be talking points that they bring to the table during debates or during propaganda campaigns against independence.
Well, and it was interesting. They didn't say they were going to cut off the pipeline at any point. They said they would put $2 to $5 a barrel, and that was them trying to play hardball there. And it's good that those talking points are brought up, because right away Alberta needs to be thinking, oh, we need to build a new pipeline that joins the old pipeline that goes from Alberta directly to the United States.
JP Alberta First, thank you so much. You're so kind for the $10 super chat saying,
thank you.
After Alberta independence, who does everyone think the next target for the majority of the equalization will be?
British Columbia, 100%. I used to work in the mining industry in British Columbia and the natural resource sector. They have been so regulated that there is a massive amount of wealth in BC. I almost think there's more in BC than even Alberta, even without the oil, with the mining. That being said, once the remittance payments are gone from Alberta, the federal government's going to come knocking on BC's door and say, you need to access those because we need our welfare checks. And they may go to Saskatchewan, but I think they would want to go to BC first. Then again, BC is going to be cut off because Alberta is going to be lying in their way. So maybe they do hit up Saskatchewan hard.
And now we'll go into your comments. Thank you so much for all the super chats. I'll read your names in a bit. Justin GP says, you're both doing great with the two shows. Thank you so much. Your work ethic is one of the many reasons you're true honorary Albertans and can move here from Mexico anytime to start the Nat and the Guy TV channel. Thank you so much. And we are really glad that even when we say we are Mexico, we already escaped from Canada. A lot of you have almost adopted us as honorary Albertans because that is the only hope I see at all in the northern part and in Canada in general, and to move away from Canada, because again, we made that decision when there was no Alberta independence movement, when we were already concerned about what the government might do to us, especially if we wanted to start speaking out and continuing to advocate for free speech itself, against digital ID, against digital currency, and against what the federal government had been doing for the past 10 years that we got to see firsthand, because we both moved. You moved back to Canada, I moved to Canada right before the Liberals went in, so we got to see the decline in real time in one of the worst cities affected by it, which was Vancouver.
Well, if they want to censor the show, they're going to have to censor 2 shows now because we're going twice a day. That's number one. Number two, right now, both of the shows on the thumbnail say Alberta Independence in very large letters. It will continue to do that. Eventually, the morning show may say Canada's downfall, just so we can avoid censorship of the federal government and whatever kind of crazy tricks they try to do. But even if we label it the downfall of Canada, it's going to be about Alberta independence.
And Sean was asking Jez and GP if there's any chance he could be an honorary Albertan. But thank you so much to Real Steven Jensen saying, have you been to Chris Scott Whistle Stop event, big rally here on May the 2nd with music, speakers, fundraiser, etc. So that's approximately at 10 to 11 a.m. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat.
Let me screenshot that. Hold on.
Have you been to a Chris Scott Whistle Stop event?
But I want to profile it next time he has an event.
I know, but that's what he's asking.
Yeah. No, we haven't, but we're going to start. We're trying to reach out to him to get an interview. We haven't had time to reach out to a lot of people the last couple of days.
Yes.
But somebody did get back to us that I was shocked that was willing to do an interview.
That will be a very interesting, and we're very thankful.
That will be a surprise interview when we do it, because I won't believe it until we actually have the interview and it's filmed.
Exactly. But thank you so much to that person.
When we reached out to that individual, Nat literally said, we're never going to get an interview with him, so why are we even reaching out? I said, just put the message out there. And they got back to us and they gave us dates. Yeah. So,
but we will also continue to profile all events.
The Whistle Stop is definitely somebody, the owner of the Whistle Stop is definitely somebody we've been looking to interview.
Yes. And now some of the messages went away, but they were funny, so I want to read them. Hold on. Where were we? Oh, no. The page started glitching.
And we're not going to go to RUMBLE today just because we ran so over, because I did want to get to that email. I felt that was really important. Yes. I'll bump those stories over to Rumble tomorrow, and we might have a longer segment over there.
Justin GP says, Sean, I was going to ask you if I could move to the USA if we don't get enough yes votes. Well, I'm glad that you're making connections with each other.
And I didn't know if I was happy or sad about it, but Keith Wilson was asked today on an interview, or yesterday on an interview, well, are you prepared if Alberta doesn't get its independence? And well, what would you do then? He goes, yeah, I would accept it, but I would be out. I would not stay in Alberta at that point. I would move to the US like hundreds of thousands of other Canadians are doing. And I think a lot of people in Alberta have that same sentiment. This is our last real hope to save Alberta.
Thank you so much to Real Stephen Jensen again for the $5 super chat.
Oh,
saying,
thank you.
I live in the RV park at Whistle Stop. Chris is a great friend.
Oh.
Let him know we want to interview him.
Well, we're going to send an email.
Yeah,
we're sending 5 emails out. We try to do it on a daily basis.
Yes.
We're going to try to look for his contact information, and we'll send one out tonight, maybe.
Yes, but that's great. And thank you for highlighting him as well.
Yeah. And a lot of people bring him up, so.
Sean says to Justin GP, not sure if Oregon would be an upgrade, but yes, honorary Oregonian, I anoint thee. So you've been anointed by Sean.
If you move to Oregon, it's ideologically captured, but the eastern side of the state is actually really good. Just like Washington, the eastern side of the state almost shouldn't be part of Washington state.
And Roland Halleck said, smoking is my right, not the government's right.
Well, and that's the thing. They're trying to outright ban it in the UK now for anybody born after 2009. That is literally Chinese authoritarianism at that point.
Escape from China says, Edmonton police are now carrying facial recognition devices as well. So again, it's also already in Canada and Alberta.
Well, it's time to be fake Muslim. Put on your little burqa there.
Yeah.
And then how are they going to use it?
Troglodyte says, imagine smoking while posting the truth in the UK. Yeah, double whammy there. Sean says, who is going to pay the cigarette tax if you can't buy cigarettes? Well, sure they'll move it on to vapes and other things. Della Robinson says, Kuzma is gone, suggested by Secretary Lutnick. It is not a good deal. Canada is in real trouble. China is an export country. Carney made a mistake. Many mistakes.
Many mistakes. And he's touting all these as big trade deals, but they benefit China and they benefit the other country, not Canada.
Mm-hmm. Roland says, the government, I read that one. Sam says, don't shoot the messenger because Sam is the one that sent us that email. It's not from him. I don't know if read it or found it somewhere else or someone else posted it. But thank you so much for that because it actually brought in a great conversation.
It was an intelligent reply from nationalists from a different perspective of Saskatchewan's going to be part of Canada and we're going to weaponize it against Alberta. Mm-hmm. It really gets you thinking about, okay, we need to build a direct pipeline to the United States and in quick fashion.
Tal Talks Hello says, hello, howdy again, Nat and Guy. Thank you for being here, Tal. And Tal has been one of the first ones that started following us when we were talking about Alberta independence and also does a lot of stuff with their own X and with Alberta independence as well.
Well, I'm surprised my camera's freaking holding up here. After we did the first show this morning, I accidentally left only my camera on, and then I started to do the night show. I was turning the cameras on, and I'm like, oh shit, this one's been on for hours.
Oh, damn, you have to say.
Oh, yeah, usually the end of the show's on Rumble. This is the end of the show today. We got another super chat. Thank you.
Hold on.
Everybody's really generous.
Real Stephen Jensen, thank you so much. Says, post your email. I'll get him to contact you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the $2 super chat. And thank you for letting us know you have a contact with him as well. And
post the email, he said, though.
Like, send the email.
Oh, okay.
Send your email and he'll help us.
But how will you send the email to him?
Do you have his contact info?
No, he'll get his contact info.
No, if you post the email, he'll say that we try to contact him, right? I'll get him to contact you. Well, our email is natandtheguy@gmail.com. It's in the description as well. It's in our About section on the channel as well. But we can try to reach out to him as well.
Yeah.
Too.
We usually reach out to everybody through X. And if they have their messages open, that makes it the easiest way. If they don't, we still try to find other contact information. But a lot of the time, if their messages aren't open on X, it's hard to find their contact.
Yes. And for some reason, the chat messed up because the stream messed up. But I'm almost done to the point where I can bring them up on screen again.
Oh, okay.
Justin GP says...
And we're going to stay on a little longer, like a little bit of a fireside chat. We were planning to end at 6:30, but we really do appreciate everybody tuning into both shows. And we want to show the respect of trying to read most of the comments here.
Exactly. Justin GP says to Sean, and I anoint thee an honorary Albertan. Now get up here and sign the vote, the yes vote. Sean says maybe if Alberta gets the Northwest Territories, we'll finally rename Great Slave Lake too.
Yeah, and I will say the Yukon and the Northwest Territories are just that. They're territories, and they don't have as many roadblocks in front of them as a lot of other provinces do for independence.
Escape from Canada says Carney is changing the constitution. Provinces will no longer be able to leave. Fortunately, the new changes will be too late to stop Alberta, but it may stop Saskatchewan.
Well, and that's what I've been saying about Alberta being the first to move. They had a huge advantage. They caught the federal government off guard. And this is why I've been really kind of complaining to Saskatchewans. You need to get this thing moving quick. Carney's trying to put roadblocks in through the Constitution, through the 30 by 30 program. He wants to federalize lands. He wants to federalize Canada and take sovereignty away. Scott Moe's not doing you any favors. He was in China sitting next to Carney when he said New World Order for a reason.
Talk says Great Slaw Lake. And Sean says, okay, gotta get an address now and an ID. So maybe we'll see Sean in Alberta as well. Mostly Stunned says, that's completely ridiculous. Alberta could easily dogleg the Enbridge mainline and others into Montana and skip Saskatchewan altogether, which is kind of what you were saying of
Yeah.
They could easily do that as well. Roland says Saskatchewan will come with Alberta and hopefully will come shortly after Alberta as well. Republic of Alberta says...
Yeah, but maybe not, because Mark Carney's going to... Maybe he'll open up the natural resource sector in Saskatchewan and try to trick people of, oh, we're going to help your economy now. Because he wants remittance payments from coming from another province, which the other individual kind of brought up, which is Saskatchewan's the next best bet.
Oh, hold on. I left the other message.
And like you need, like Scott Moe's a shifty individual. He's trying to act like he's conservative, but with his firearms legislation saying we're going to protect your firearms. No, he wants you to register them and eventually sell them to the federal government when they're willing to pay fair market value. It's not protecting your firearms. It's getting you ready to take your firearms.
Republic of Alberta says Canadians kept equipment running for American personnel in minus 50-degree weather in Korea. Sorry, but immigrants can't do winter warfare. And Republic says Ottawa keeps Alberta landlocked.
The Chinese are getting better at winter warfare because they're genetically modifying their soldiers. We did a story on that quite a while ago for cold weather conditions, specifically because they were losing to the Indians in the Himalayan mountains.
Roland says Saskatchewan sells south as well. Republic of Alberta says Saskies need to get moving. They're going to get stuck with equalization payments if they don't withdraw too. Yes. Sam says, good point. They can take over Alberta's cash drain.
Yeah, the problem with Saskatchewan is he's going to unleash the natural resource sector once Alberta gets its independence, but he's going to get so much remittance payments on that thing, it's not going to benefit Saskatchewan to the way it would if Saskatchewan was independent.
Sean says the old pipeline system isn't going anywhere. Up until recently, European oil supplied most of Europe was going through Ukraine, for example.
Yeah, and they're bombing their own pipelines. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Republic says Saskies are going to get hammered, and they need to move now.
Yeah, they need to move now. They need to move quick. Don't wait for Alberta to say, oh, you can actually get your independence from Canada. You need to start the process now.
And Sam says, don't forget that pipe through southern Saskatchewan supplying Sarnia.
Yeah.
And Sam says, told you you'd get a kick out of it, guy. Because Sam sent it to us. It's not Sam that said it.
Also, let's just talk about it. The Alberta pipeline cuts through Saskatchewan a little bit. It goes into America and then back up into Canada. What's Saskatchewan going to cut off that pipeline to America? Are you out of your mind? That would absolutely devastate Saskatchewan, because if you want to play hardball with the Americans, they're going to play hardball back. And we see that happening with Carney right now.
Roland says Saskatchewan has squat compared to Alberta. And Republic says their potash, uranium, energy, and agriculture will take the brunt of the triple carbon tax once Alberta leaves as well. Justin GP says, is that letter a comedy piece? LOL. Basically, that's the delusions, but those are some of the talking points we might see coming up during debates, during propaganda pieces from the mainstream media.
And it's in the exact same stream of thought from that video we watched earlier, if you were watching, when they were talking about the remittance payments Ottawa is giving to Ottawa, how Ottawa's actually the one giving everything to Alberta and the rest of the provinces. They're trying to reframe things and reframe remittance payments as well as the natural resource sector in ways that just aren't honest and truthful.
And saying that, oh, you don't really understand what's going on with equalization because you don't understand math. Math is difficult.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of spreadsheets. That was their argument.
But it's good to know their arguments because when they start bringing these things up in the summertime, we want to be prepared.
Exactly. Sean says America is exporting more today than what we use. Isn't that definitionally energy independent? We have more oil in places like Alaska and California that we don't use.
Yeah.
Sean is from the U.S.
And Donald Trump recently used the military act to start drilling for oil on a massive scale because of what's going on in Iran right now, and so many ships are coming to the United States. So drill, baby, drill. You thought it was big before. It's going to go even further now. And anything Alberta is willing to sell to America, they're going to take. They're selling it at a discounted rate, so they don't mind paying it.
And thank you so much over on RUMBLE to Christo. I'm sorry I've kind of ignored RUMBLE today. I'll read them in a little bit as well. But thank you so much for the $10 Rumble rant.
Thank you.
Saying enjoy Whistle Stop coffees, pierogies this summer, dears. Thank you so much. And hopefully we will. And again, we do have plans.
Yeah.
Won't say them too quickly, especially if the feds are watching, but we have plans. Sam says, hate to say Jez, but the writer is serious. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not a joke to them. The Bilver says, good evening, all. Good evening. Thank you for being here. Republic says, America needs bitumen. The petrochemical polymers are required to manufacture 92% of all products the U.S. produces light crude. Sean says, and of course, Canada's ironically source of wealth over its history has came from being the USA's biggest neighbor. Why reject this?
Well, their two biggest sources of wealth are natural resources and the United States. Let's just turn both those taps off and see what happens.
And go to China.
Oh, Daddy China, come
And
here.
India.
Come here, Winnie the Pooh.
Robinson says, the article never mentions the Keystone to Texas and AECO hub through Montana to Oregon and Washington State. Don't need Saskatchewan.
Absolutely. Saskatchewan ain't playing hardball with Alberta. That means they'll have to play hardball with the United States.
Mm-hmm. Sean says, for plastic goods, sure, but not for energy. And Republic says, true, but we could find other customers easily. Alberta sells all of its commodities at a 30% discount. We also have tons of lithium.
Well, and it would actually be kind of fantastic if the federal government tried to use Saskatchewan as a weapon against Alberta, because that would give Alberta the justification to play extremely hardball with British Columbia and say, we're going to cut off all of your oil. Canada's playing hardball with us. Sorry, we're playing hardball with you. You either give us access to the coast or we're cutting off all oil. So, and then they wouldn't look like the bad guys because it's the federal government through Saskatchewan that threw the first punch. And eventually, if Alberta does want access to the coast, they are going to have to play hardball with British Columbia.
And Rafa says, hi to my friend Republic, but thank you so much, Rafa, for coming back over here. Because again, I did cancel on all my Spanish viewers for a little bit. Sean says, agreed, build a pipeline to Washington and Oregon would give exportability for Alberta. And Sean also says, Alberta, but you got to get it there. That costs money. USA, you don't need to ship it out. It's right there a foot away. And Republic says, Alberta sells its commodities to the U.S. at a 30% discount and has since the 1950s. We also prioritize American buyers and have to supply Americans first.
Yeah, and that's why America already has good trading relations with Alberta because they're getting discounted oil. They're not going to do anything to jeopardize that. They like the relationship they have with Alberta. Alberta has really been the example of how you build good trade relationship with the U.S. The fact that national Canadians aren't looking at Alberta and like, they don't have a problem. Why does Carney have a problem with the U.S.?
Roland says, Alberta has 4 refineries. How many does Saskatchewan have?
Actually, Alberta has 5 refineries. I didn't realize they had so many refineries. Somebody brought that up and I started researching it, and I was actually jaw dropped because the entire nation of Australia, I believe, only has 2 now. They shut down a bunch of their refineries.
And Sam says Saskatchewan has 23, I'm guessing, refineries, but they're mostly small.
Saskatchewan does. Yeah, they'll be small. I think Alberta has 5 very, very massive ones.
Okay. Sean says, yeah, but it's shipped at a discount because we are the customer everywhere else. Would that cost 30% and more to ship? That's it.
Yeah.
And Michael Drader says, most likely British Columbia, then Saskatchewan. You have Victoria. You have the insane asylums of Victoria and Vancouver that would stop any movements of attempts at independence.
Well, and then you have the whole other nation of 1 million First Nations claiming rights on that land now. It's going to be hard for BC to get its independence, and it's a shame because I would love to see that. We got a super chat there.
I know, but I can't bring it up for some reason.
Okay, I'll read it. First super chat I ever read. Hopefully I can read it. Don't laugh at me.
There's a reason why I read everything.
Alberta wants to double oil production. Alberta wants to double oil production. Yeah, absolutely.
Read the name and say thank you.
Why don't you read the name?
Thank you so much to Real Steven Jensen for the $2 super chat.
Thank you, Steve. And that's the first and last super chat I'll ever read. Yeah, and Alberta will be able to double its oil production once it breaks free of Canada. And Saskatchewan wants to 10x its natural resource production, and it won't be able to do it until it breaks free of Canada, unless Canada starts to use it as the new doormat and allows it to access its natural resource so it can take even higher remittance payments from it.
And Justin GP, thank you so much for the $10 Rumble rant saying, shh, secret Rumble rant. Was I not supposed to read it? But I want to read it because thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, and I left Michael Drader's comment up there. I'm sorry. We're becoming a mess now. Hold on. Roland says, most of BC wants to come with Alberta and Saskatchewan. Exactly, but the insane power centers that are Victoria and Vancouver won't let them because they're insane. And they want to train everybody. And then now we're seeing what they're doing with private property. They literally want to take away people's rights.
The good thing is the interior of British Columbia and the north of British Columbia actually think a lot more like Alberta than they do Vancouver and Victoria. And there's another port up the coast of British Columbia away from Vancouver. And that's the port you're going to need to access from Alberta. And that's the one you're going to need to play hardball with to get.
Troglodyte says First Nations are now starting to get mining going in BC. Seems they don't have to follow any of the regulatory restrictions that have suppressed BC mines for a long time. And now they have given the land. And now they are given the land.
Absolutely. It's been that way for a long time. The Chinese own the mining industry, especially within BC, but most of Canada, most of the headquarters for mining agencies are headquartered out of Vancouver. I used to work in mining. That's why I know this. They haven't had to pay attention to any of the regulations for a long time. It just hasn't been known to the general public. Now it's starting to be known because of all these land grabs and what's happening. They're realizing these First Nations tribes are taking control of a lot of the natural resources, so they can probably sell it off to China.
Exactly. And they're also using a lot of they use the Canadian name, the Chinese companies do, to be able to go into other markets. And they have tried to almost destroy parts of Chile as well. And they were allowed in and then they were kind of kicked out, but they're still there. Charlie Defoe says...
Well, they're monopolizing the industry and forcing these First Nations to sell to the Chinese because the Chinese own all the mining companies. They go in there and if you want our assistance and you want half of the profits, you're going to have to sell to us. And that's the game plan.
Mm-hmm. Charlie Defoe, hello, says, nice to see you again. Same. Go Western Canada, go Alberta.
Absolutely.
Go away from Canada. Yes. Sean says, without equalization, the Maritimes will have problems. I think Quebec will be fine. They got untapped resources. And yet they're the ones that get the most.
Read that again.
Without equalization, the Maritimes will have problems. I think Quebec will be fine. They've got untapped resources.
Yeah, I've been researching a lot into Quebec, and they're going to be fine. They've been planning this since 1995. I initially thought they were a welfare state of Alberta. That's only 7% of their economy, and they've internalized a lot of their economy and arranged it in such a way that they're ready for independence if this thing can go forward and they can get some politicians with some freaking balls.
Buffalo Alberta says Ontario's total debts are $1.334 trillion with an annual GDP of $1.2 trillion. They're cooked. Alberta is servicing Ontario's debt.
Yeah, and also Quebec doesn't have to pay remittance payments, and they get they don't get the same kind of regulations, meaning the mining industry in Quebec runs deep. There's a ton of mining there that I'm learning about, yet they don't have to pay the same kind of remittance that British Columbia or Alberta does.
They're the ones getting it. Philippe Zolio says Quebec should be fine. Yes, if they ever decided to stop relying on everybody else and stop using their independence as a cudgel to get Ontario to give Ottawa to give them whatever they want, then yes, they would be fine.
They're going to turn a lot more conservative once they have to stand on their own 2 feet and if they get their own independence.
Justin GP says, I will send double the rant on Rumble tomorrow. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Justin GP. Also, great canvasser and going off to the remote areas and still getting a bunch of signatures. So thank you for that update too. JP Alberta First says, Guy and Nat, you should plan on a couple of trips during the campaign stage to meet some of your viewers. Again, things are in motion.
We absolutely want to, and we're looking into a few things. We spent a lot of money to relocate to Mexico. And we're trying to get some money together so we can go up to Alberta to report from the ground, number one, but also do some other things.
Yes. So it's being planned. Sean says, my guess is Quebec would join up with the other small French-speaking areas of the Maritimes of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia to make Quebec Plus.
Yeah.
Quebec Plus. Real Steven Jensen says, give me your email. I'll get you in touch with him. Again, it's natandtheguy@gmail.com.
And it's in the description.
You. Yes, and it's in the description as well.
Of this video.
Yes.
And there's a lot of comments. I'm hungry for a taco, but we'll continue to go.
Sam says, if you're in Cowtown, Guy, I'll ride you up to the whistle stop. I have a spare lid.
Oh, fantastic. If we go to Alberta, or when we go to Alberta, we're definitely going to the whistle stop, period. There's a Paul's Pizza we're going to as well. So all the places that the NDP has tried to ban.
Yes. Sean says Oregon is going to be the first to go independent, supposedly. So I anoint the whole chat as Oregonians.
Well, I hope so for your sake. But when you look at independence movements in the United States, which I don't favor as much, because the United States really represents Western culture in general, and if that goes, China is going to become the new world power. But Texas has always been that state that has had a strong sense of independence. They poll as high as 33% under Biden.
Mm-hmm. Sean says, Carney's kids made it to America, from what I heard. Yeah, they're there. Same with the wife. Republic says, you're the guy that keeps saying Alberta independence has no chance of being successful, to Sam. And Sam says, I am skeptical at 250,000 signatures, but I am a yes man all the way.
Fantastic.
And it's fine to be skeptical. But again, and we have talked a lot about the hidden votes that might not show up in the signatures, but will show up at the polls, especially because Carney, and I do expect Carney to continue to do what he's been doing to help Alberta independence.
Well, and you typically have really low voter turnouts in non-national elections. But for this particular vote, you're going to have a massive turnout from everybody that does support independence. Mm-hmm. Well, the other side probably isn't coming out because it's not a national election vote.
Yeah. Justin GB says, this last week was busy in the city centers for signatures. I got a total of 150 in 3 days, which brought my total to 385, which is great for a city of 70,000.
That's huge.
Yes, that's huge. And great job, Jess, as well. And again, we were saying, Jazz has been going also to remote locations and being able to get more signatures.
It's not always about the number of signatures. No. It's just having a presence out there and going consistently, and Jess has done that.
And doing it and being involved in the democratic process, the actual democratic process. Oh, sorry, Stephen Jensen. No, that was the one I read, but I couldn't bring up. But there it is. I brought it up. Sean says, good job, Jess. And Jess says, sorry, the team got 150. I got about 100 out of those, which brought me to 385 personally.
Fantastic.
Again, that's insane. Very good. And thank you. Sean says, Jess, and impressed by the spelling of center, the American way, adopt American spelling, Alberta. I went to a school that was more British based, so my spelling has always been more British.
Oh, to an annoyance factor. I'm very American. Like, I don't care about my spelling, and I'm bad at it anyway. And she's a spelling Nazi about everything.
John Robinson says, smash the like button, fans or folks. Thank you so much. And yes, it really does help us out. We're trying to get to 100 likes on every stream because it really does help. Go.
No, nothing.
Sean says, I could see Canada taking a little oil out of the pipeline, just like Ukraine used to do with Russia, and giving Moldova and Transnistria free oil for decades that just got cut off recently.
Yeah, they're going to try all kinds of funny business, and that's why it's important to build direct pipelines to the United States once Alberta gets its independence, period. And once Saskatchewan gets its independence, turn that pipeline back on. But I would almost say make sure you're not sending in any oil through Saskatchewan until they're absolutely independent.
Sean says California has closed in the last couple of years refineries that Alberta has in total. And Sean says...
a lot of people don't know California has a lot of oil, and they're doing the same thing Carney is there. They're turning off all the there's a lot of refineries there. I used to live in Long Beach, California, and it is nothing but smokestacks and refineries, and they're shutting a lot of refineries and oil wells down.
Point Rupert is the other port, says Sean.
Yeah.
Prince Rupert, sorry. Prince Rupert is the other. Yeah, there we go. he and I both corrected ourselves. Sean's.
They're going to want to use land grabs with First Nations tribes on to block the path from Alberta to Prince Rupert. It's going to be obvious. That's going to be a strategy of theirs.
Sean says Quebec has a lot of their own bureaucratic systems that Alberta lacks. And Troglodyte says, lol, I know the feeling. I stopped there as a kid on a freighter heading up the coast to live in Stewart, right beside the Alaska border. Cold.
God, I want some pierogies now that they were talking about pierogies in Whistle Stop. Maybe we'll go get some after this. We'll have to buy them and make them ourselves, though.
Yes, which I don't know how to do. Justin GP says, sorry, guy, I know you're hungry. One last comment. I had 3 people come up and specifically say they aren't signing out of fear, but definitely voting yes. So the silent vote is the real thing. Exactly. And that's what we have also been saying. And a lot of other people have also been hearing on the street as well, like Marty, like John, and other people we've talked to.
Yeah, and I'm going to say when Alberta gets its independence, it's going to mean a lot of money in the pockets of oil workers and miners and people in the natural resource sector. Mark Carney may try to collude with corporations when it comes close to the vote to give out remote work contracts. If you can, try not to take the remote work contracts, or make sure you have a mail-in ballot, or you're going to have access on October 19th to that vote, because this is the vote for a new and independent nation, but it's going to affect people in the natural resource sector a lot. They're going to make a lot more money if Alberta does get its independence.
Yes. And Sean says, Guy, I am from San Pedro, right next to LBC. No idea what that
right
means.
on. Yeah, it's right
what
there.
What does that mean?
It's another city right next to Long Beach, California. LBC is Long Beach
Thank you.
City.
I've only been to LA once, did not like it.
Yeah, Long Beach isn't the nicest city. They completely redid the downtown, so tourists think it's the nicest city in the world, but it's just that one little part of downtown.
No idea. And now I have to power through the RUMBLE ones real quick.
And if you're going to leave any more comments today, leave them on RUMBLE, because we're going to stop with the YouTube. We caught up on the YouTube chats.
If there's any very important ones, I will read them.
Okay.
Hold on. KP4U says, I sure hope the debate isn't about being a dirty rat and betraying your citizens, or Jason Kenney might win. And then says, I believe it's pronounced Aaron the Tool. Yes, that's how I say it too.
Aaron the Fool.
Yeah, or the Fool, exactly. Christo says, hello, dears. Alberta independence. Late to the show. Good evening, KP. The Buffalo Territory should reunite once again for sure.
Absolutely.
And Christo says, did you see the price of smokes in England? Equivalent to 30 Canadian dollars. I still get mine for 3 here.
Yeah, get them off the reserve. Except for that time that RCMP officer pulled that guy over and said, oh, your smokes aren't stamped. I would have flipped out. That guy stayed nice and calm. He must have just been getting off a long day of work and was real tired.
KP4U says, I'm all for avoiding taxes for everyone. It's just less for the government to steal. Exactly. And Christo says that's the one reason for agreeing with the cartels. They are a competition to the state monopoly on substance dealing.
Yeah.
In a way. But I mean, they're terrible and horrible.
Well, and this is why Trump's trying to come into South America with the Shield of Americas to clean up a lot of these cartels, because he wants to build manufacturing and he wants to build businesses, but he can't have cartels in the pockets of legitimate businesses. Otherwise, it's just not going to work out long term.
Krista says, every day waking up this side of the lawn in a blessed one, brother. Thank you. And Krista says that's amazing to Jess. Yes, about all the canvassing. And Krista says, I've had the same response from many people, which is a sad state of society to have gotten to, but optimistic about the real vote. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people might be panicky right now because, it's either too little signatures, or some even say too many. But the silent vote, I don't
think they're panicky. And I think you're going to see a huge swarm of young people come over to independence once the vote is actually set in stone, and we're going to have it. Right now, the young people just don't believe something like that can happen in modern society.
Because they've been so demoralized by what has actually happened in Canada and in Alberta and in their own lives.
And they've lost complete hope in any political system within Canada.
Exactly. And just one last one, Sean says, San Pedro. See you guys. San Pedro. That's how it's said. It's a Spanish word. And Chocolate, also, thank you for being here. as well. And thank you to everybody that super chatted. It was a lot of people. Thank you to, Real Steven Jensen for letting us know that you can give us the contact so we can ask for an interview. And Justin GP doing great as well. Rafa, great to see you here. Everybody else, thank you so much for the super chats and for being here for so long, because we stayed longer than we
We'll
were
be
going
on
to.
tomorrow from, no afternoon show tomorrow because you're going to be on WDW Pro, but we will have a night show from 5 to 6:30. We might go to 7 tomorrow, but not as late as we got today.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of your evening. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. If you haven't hit the like button, it also really helps us. So please do so as well. And we will see you tomorrow, 5 p.m. Or you can see me on WDW Pro at 10 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. There we go. 10 a.m. our time.
Adios.
Have a good night.